Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Unexplained Files. Tonight we are peeling back the layers on one of the most enduring and unsettling figures in modern folklore, the Men in Black. We've all seen the movies, but the real story is darker, stranger, and far more complex. What if the greatest threat after seeing something you can't explain in the sky isn't public ridicule or disbelief? What if the real threat is a quiet, confident knock on your door from someone who already knows exactly what you saw and has one simple, terrifying instruction: forget it. Before we dive into the mystery, if you're as fascinated by the unknown as I am, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us find more stories that deserve to be told. And as we go, drop a comment below with a mystery you think is due for a new look. All right, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin our investigation. You find yourself in a small, cramped attic room in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The year is 1953. The air is thick with the smell of old paper, ink, and the faint, buzzing energy of 1,000 unanswered questions. You are Albert K. Bender. By day, you work as a foreman in a factory, a respectable, ordinary life. But up here, in what you call your chamber of horrors, decorated with Gothic and supernatural art, you are the director of the International Flying Saucer Bureau, or IFSB. It's your creation, a passion project that has spiraled into something much bigger. You are the nexus point for a web of UFO sightings and paranormal reports stretching across the globe. Your publication, Space Review, connects hundreds of amateur investigators, all of them looking to you for answers. And you believe you found them. For months, you've been piecing it together. The patterns in sightings, the consistencies in witness descriptions, the strange fragments of information sent to you by your members. It's all leading to one singular, startling conclusion about the origin and motive of the flying saucers. You feel a thrill of discovery mixed with a cold spike of fear. You know you're onto something huge, something the world needs to know. In the October 1953 issue of Space Review, you write a cautious but bold editorial. You tell your readers that you have the answer. You urge them to be careful, but you promise that the next issue will contain a full report, the solution to the flying saucer mystery. The magazine goes out. The days tick by. You work on your manuscript, refining the details, preparing for the revelation that you believe will change the world. Then, one afternoon, it happens. You're alone in your home. It's quiet, the way a house can only be in the middle of a weekday. You feel a strange sensation wash over you, a building sense of dread, a chilling premonition that makes the hair on your arms stand up. You feel as if you are being watched, not by eyes in the window, but by a presence that is right there in the room with you, a consciousness pressing in on your own. A wave of dizziness hits you, and you notice a strange, acrid smell, like burning sulfur, hanging in the air. As the disorientation subsides, you see them. 3 figures standing right there in your room. They didn't knock. They didn't use the door. They are simply there. They are all dressed in identical, immaculate black suits. Their clothes seem to absorb the light, making them stand out like holes cut in reality. Their faces are indistinct, shadowed, but what you can see is unsettling. Their features seem vaguely foreign, their skin an unnatural tone. But it's their eyes that lock you in place. You have the distinct, terrifying impression that they are glowing, radiating a cold, internal light. You are frozen, not just by fear, but by a palpable force emanating from them. Your mind feels sluggish, your body heavy and unresponsive. One of them seems to communicate with you, though its lips barely move. The words form directly inside your head, a calm, emotionless, telepathic command. They know your name. They know about the IFSB. They know in precise detail what you were planning to publish. They confirm it for you. You were right. Your theory, the one you painstakingly assembled, is correct. And for that very reason, you are to stop. Immediately. You will not publish your findings. You will shut down the IFSB. You will cease all investigation into the subject of flying saucers. It is not a request. It is a statement of fact. A declaration of how things are now going to be. The message is delivered with an authority that feels ancient and absolute. This isn't the government, you realize. This isn't the Air Force or the FBI. This is something else entirely, something alien and powerful beyond your comprehension. The dread you feel is primal. They leave as they arrived, suddenly, silently. One moment they are there, the next, the room is empty, save for you, your pounding heart, and the lingering, sickening smell of sulfur. This is the well-established account of Albert Bender, the case that truly gave birth to the Men in Black phenomenon. But here's a lesser-known detail that deepens the mystery. Years later, Bender would publish a book titled Flying Saucers and the Three Men. It was a bizarre, almost psychedelic narrative describing astral projection to a secret Antarctic base inhabited by monstrous aliens. Most in the UFO community dismissed it as fantasy, a complete departure from his earlier, more grounded work. The fringe theory, however, suggests the book was not what it seemed. Was it a piece of deliberate disinformation he was forced to write to discredit himself? Or was it a desperate attempt to communicate a terrifying truth through the only means he had left? The safety of fiction. The aftermath of the visit was swift and total. Albert Bender, the enthusiastic and dedicated leader of the world's largest civilian UFO group, completely collapsed. He was hospitalized for severe headaches and anxiety. He followed their instructions to the letter. He immediately stopped publication of Space Review, sending out a final chilling bulletin to his members. The mystery of the flying saucers is no longer a mystery. The source is already known. We advise those engaged in saucer work to please be very cautious. He burned all his research, shuttered the IFSB, and refused to speak on the topic for a decade. He was a man utterly broken by what he had experienced. Which leaves us with a critical question. What could possibly induce such absolute terror and compliance in a dedicated researcher on the verge of his life? It's great discovery. If these were simply government agents in black suits, wouldn't a man so invested in the truth try to find a way to expose them, to fight back? Or did Albert Bender come face to face with a power so far beyond human understanding that obedience was the only instinct left? Bender's terrifying 1953 encounter in his attic room is the story that crystallized the image of the Men in Black in the public consciousness, giving them a name and a legend. But the trail of these silent, dark-suited enforcers may begin even earlier in the hazy post-war summer of 1947, a time when the world was just beginning to look to the skies with a new sense of wonder and anxiety. To find the origin point, you have to travel back 6 years before Bender's silencing to the waters of the Pacific Northwest, just 3 days before pilot Kenneth Arnold's famous sighting would give the world the term flying saucer. You are Harold Dahl. It's June 21, 1947. The air is cool and salty over Puget Sound, Washington. You're a harbor patrolman, and today you're out on the water in your workboat near Maury Island. Your teenage son Charles is with you, along with 2 other crewmen and the family dog. It's a routine patrol, the water calm, the sky a placid gray. Then you see them. At first you can't process what you're looking at. 6 massive metallic objects are hanging motionless in the air about 2,000 feet above your boat. They are shaped like giant donuts or inner tubes, with dark holes in the center. They are completely silent. You watch mesmerized as 5 of the craft slowly circle a 6th, which appears to be struggling, descending erratically. Suddenly, the central craft begins to expel material. Thousands of thin, white metallic sheets flutter down like leaflets, followed by a shower of much heavier, darker chunks of a slag-like substance. It's raining metal. You shout for everyone to take cover as the debris pelts your boat. Hot molten metal splashes onto the deck, setting a small fire. A piece strikes your son on the arm, burning him. Another piece strikes and kills your dog. The air fills with a strange hissing sound. You grab the boat's camera and manage to snap a few pictures of the objects before the craft. Its strange payload, seemingly delivered, begins to rise. The 6 objects then accelerate at an impossible speed and vanish into the overcast sky. You are left on a damaged boat, nursing your son's injury, surrounded by strange metallic fragments and the profound, chilling silence of the aftermath. You collect samples of the debris and head back to Tacoma. You report the incredible event to your supervisor, Fred Krisman. The next morning, things get stranger. You're eating breakfast when you are approached by a man. He's tall, wearing a crisp black suit, which strikes you as odd for this part of town. He pulls up in a brand new, gleaming black 1947 Buick sedan. He doesn't introduce himself. He simply says he wants to talk about what you saw yesterday. You, being a simple harbor patrolman suddenly thrust into an unbelievable situation, agree to talk. You sit across from him in a diner booth. The man doesn't ask you what happened. He tells you. He recounts the events of the previous day with an impossible, unnerving accuracy. He knows about the 6 objects, the falling debris, the damage to your boat, even your son's injury. He knows things you haven't told anyone. His voice is flat, devoid of emotion. He speaks with a strange, formal cadence. He looks directly at you and you feel a distinct sense of unease, a feeling that this is no ordinary investigator. Then comes the warning. He tells you, in no uncertain terms, that you did not see what you saw. He says that it would be best for you and your family if you simply forgot the entire incident. He mentions your photographs, proof that he knows far more than he should. His parting words are a masterpiece of understated menace. What I have said is proof to you that I know what I am talking about. I trust you will do the wise thing. Then he stands up, walks out of the diner, gets in his pristine black Buick, and drives away, leaving you with a cold cup of coffee and a heart full of fear. This is arguably the first documented MIB encounter of the modern era. The entire Maury Island case is a well-known, if controversial, piece of UFO history. What is lesser known, or at least less focused on, is the subsequent chain of events that seem to validate the MIB's threat. Dahl and Chrisman initially reported their story to an amateur aviation magazine, which brought it to the attention of Kenneth Arnold, the famous pilot. Arnold, in turn, contacted 2 Army Air Force intelligence officers, Captain William Davidson and Lieutenant Frank Brown. They flew to Tacoma to investigate, interviewed Dahl and Chrisman, and collected samples of the strange debris. On their return flight to Hamilton Field in California, their B-25 bomber mysteriously caught fire and crashed, killing both men. The official cause was an engine fire, but the fringe theory, fueled by an anonymous tip to a local newspaper, was that the plane was sabotaged or even shot down to prevent the evidence from reaching officials. In the wake of this tragedy, under intense scrutiny and pressure, Harold Dahl and Fred Chrisman suddenly recanted their entire story. They claimed it was a complete hoax, a tall tale they invented that spun tragically out of control. The Air Force closed the case. But was it really a hoax? Or was the fear of what happened to Davidson and Brown, coupled with the MIB's chillingly specific threat against his family, enough to make Harold Dahl say whatever he had to in order to make it all go away? It's a question that haunts the case. The idea that 2 men would invent a story so elaborate, only to then add the bizarre, almost cinematic detail of a man in a black suit, seems less plausible than the alternative, that a real terrifying event was followed by an equally terrifying warning. This brings us to our critical question. If we assume the event was real and the man in black was a government agent from some nascent, pre-CIA intelligence group trying to cover up a test of an experimental aircraft, why the theater? Why the mysterious meeting in a diner? The vague threats? The almost supernatural omniscience? Why not simply detain Dahl, debrief him, and have him sign a national security oath, a standard and legally binding procedure? What is the purpose of adopting this strange, intimidating persona, unless the goal is something more than simple silence? Is it possible the objective is not just to suppress information, but to actively discredit the witness by pushing them into a state of fear and paranoia, making their story sound unhinged if they ever decide to tell it? The man who visited Harold Dahl in that diner was a prototype, an early model of a figure that would become terrifyingly consistent over the next several decades. His black suit, his pristine black car, his unnerving omniscience, these were the opening notes of a chilling symphony that would be played for witnesses across the world. From the seeds planted at Maury Island and watered by the terror of Albert Bender, a clear and distinct archetype has grown. If you were to create a field guide to paranormal entities, the entry for the man in black would be remarkably specific. So let's build that profile. Let's piece together the puzzle from countless fragmented reports to understand what exactly you're dealing with when you get that knock on your door. It often starts with a car. You look out your window and see a vehicle that is both immaculate and deeply out of place. It's usually a black sedan, often a vintage model like a Cadillac or a Lincoln, but it's in perfect showroom condition, gleaming as if it just rolled off the assembly line, even if it's a model from 20 or 30 years ago. There are no smudges, no dust, no sign of wear. Sometimes the license plates are missing. Other times they bear a strange, unidentifiable sequence of numbers and letters. The car glides to a stop in front of your house with an unsettling silence, its engine making no discernible sound. Then they emerge. Usually in threes, but sometimes alone or in pairs. The first thing you notice is the uniform, the black suit. This isn't just a piece of clothing. It seems to be an essential part of their being. The suits are often described as being cut in a slightly old-fashioned style, yet they look brand new. The material is odd, sometimes reported as having a strange sheen or a stiffness that prevents it from wrinkling or creasing in a natural way. It's as if they are wearing a freshly pressed shell, not fabric. Paired with this is a stark white shirt and a thin black tie. Nothing is ever out of place. No scuffs on the shoes, no lint on the lapel. Their perfection is, in itself, a form of intimidation. As they approach, you get a look at their faces, and this is where the profound sense of wrongness truly begins. You enter the uncanny valley. The skin is unnaturally pale, waxy, and smooth, like a mannequin's. It's often described as being completely free of blemishes, pores, or wrinkles, giving them an ageless, artificial quality. Some witnesses report a slight grayish or olive tint to their complexion. They typically have no facial hair, not even the shadow of a beard. And sometimes eyebrows seem to be missing entirely. Their facial structure can be sharp and angular, with high cheekbones and a pointed chin, often with features that witnesses describe as vaguely Asian or Slavic, but in a way they can't quite define. They wear black fedoras pulled down low, and almost always dark sunglasses even if they show up at your door at midnight. In the rare instances when the eyes are seen, they are described as large, dark, and almond-shaped, sometimes appearing to have no pupils, or as Albert Bender claimed, glowing with a faint, internal luminescence. Their physical form is just as strange. They are often reported as being either unusually short and slight, or tall and unnervingly thin. Their movements are stiff, robotic, and lacking in natural fluidity. They don't walk so much as they glide, their bodies held in a rigid, formal posture. The whole effect is that of a poorly designed automaton, a being that has studied humanity but can't quite master the subtle art of inhabiting a human body. Then they speak, and the illusion shatters completely. The voice is a monotone, a flat, robotic drone with no emotion or inflection. The cadence of their speech is all wrong, filled with awkward pauses and misplaced emphasis, as if a machine is sounding out words phonetically. They use a bizarrely formal, almost archaic vocabulary. They might say, "We have been apprised of your recent experience," instead of, "We heard about what you saw." This mechanical speech, combined with their non-human appearance, creates a deeply unsettling sense of disconnect. They look vaguely human, but they sound like a machine. This is all compounded by their behavior. As we've seen, they possess an impossible knowledge of your life and your sighting. But this supernatural intelligence is paired with a profound ineptitude for the mundane. This is a lesser-known, but recurring, detail in MIB lore. There are accounts of men in black being completely baffled by everyday objects. One witness from the 1960s, a man named Jack Robinson, reported that the MIB who visited him seemed fascinated by a ballpoint pen on his table, examining it as if it were an alien artifact. In another famous case, an MIB offered a glass of water, simply stared at it, seemingly unsure of what to do. The most bizarre of these accounts tells of a man in black who, when offered Jell-O, attempted to drink it. These moments of profound clumsiness and confusion suggest that whatever they are not native to our world or our customs. This collection of physical and behavioral tics has given rise to a compelling fringe theory that the men in black are not human government agents in disguise. They are something else entirely: biological robots, synthetic humanoids, or clones. In this view, their oddities are not part of an act. They are glitches, The waxy skin, the robotic movements, the monotone voice. These are the limitations of their design. Their inability to handle a simple glass of water isn't a performance. It's a programming error. They are constructs sent to interact with us, but they are flawed copies, and the longer you look, the more the imperfections show. This astonishing consistency in reports from people who have no connection to one another is the bedrock of the MIB mystery. So, how do we explain it? How can so many independent witnesses from the 1950s to today, from different countries and cultures, all describe the same vintage Cadillac, the same weirdly formal speech, the same waxy skin, and the same confusion over everyday objects? Is this a powerful testament to the reality of a single bizarre phenomenon? A confirmation that these strange suited entities are real and operate according to a specific, observable pattern? Or is it evidence of something else entirely? The birth and evolution of a powerful modern myth, where the details of the first encounters became a cultural script, subconsciously shaping how all future witnesses would perceive and report their own terrifying experiences. While the profile we've built is a composite, a sketch assembled from dozens of fragmented stories. Sometimes a single, well-documented case provides all of those bizarre elements in one terrifying package. Sometimes, an encounter is so clear, so detailed, and so profoundly strange that it forces you to move past the idea of simple intimidation and into the realm of the overtly supernatural. This is one of those cases. It pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible and serves as a stark warning about the true nature of the forces we're exploring. You are Dr. Herbert Hopkins. It is the evening of September 11th, 1976 in Orchard Beach, Maine. You are a successful and respected 58-year-old physician, a family man, and a consulting hypnotist. You are not a fantasist. You are a man of science and reason. But you have a deep interest in the UFO phenomenon, and you've been acting as a consultant on a particularly complex abduction case. Tonight, you are at home alone. Your wife and family are out. The phone rings. You pick it up. The voice on the other end is male, speaking in a flat, even tone. He identifies himself as the vice president of the New Jersey UFO Research Organization. He says he wants to speak with you about the abduction case you've been investigating. You're intrigued. The organization is a real one, and you're always willing to collaborate. You tell the man you'd be happy to talk. He says he's in the area and asks if he can come over right now. You agree, telling him your address. You hang up the phone. You walk out of your study and towards the kitchen. Before you've even taken more than a few steps, you hear a soft knock on your back porch door. A cold knot of anxiety tightens in your stomach. There is no way anyone could have gotten from a phone to your door that fast. You open the door and find yourself looking at a man who will be seared into your memory forever. He stands under the yellow porch light, and he is a caricature of the men in black archetype. He's dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, a crisp white shirt, a thin black tie, and a black fedora. He's also wearing gray suede gloves. But the clothing is the most normal thing about him. His skin is a shocking, chalky white, like a corpse. His head is perfectly round and completely hairless. You notice with a jolt that he has no eyebrows, not even eyelashes. His nose is small, and his ears are tiny. Against the deathly pallor of his skin, his lips are a vivid blood-red gash, so perfectly defined and colored that you are certain he is wearing lipstick. He confirms he is the man who just called you, though he offers no explanation for his impossible arrival. You invite him in, a decision you will immediately regret. He glides into your home and sits down, his movements stiff and economical. He never removes his hat or his gloves. He begins to speak in that same flat, robotic monotone from the phone call, his voice completely devoid of any human warmth or inflection. He discusses the complex abduction case with you, demonstrating a total and perfect knowledge of every single detail, including facts that you had not shared with anyone. After a few minutes, the tone of the conversation shifts. He stops discussing the case and turns his attention to you. He calmly, methodically tells you that you have been getting too close to the truth. He tells you that your research must stop. He says, you have 2 coins in your pocket. You instinctively reach into your trousers and, to your astonishment, you find 2 brand new shiny pennies. You have no memory of putting them there. He instructs you to take one out. You do, placing it in the open palm of your hand. It feels solid, real. Watch the coin, the visitor says, his voice as flat as ever. You stare down at the copper penny resting in your hand. And then the impossible happens. It begins to shimmer. The sharp edges blur, the color starts to fade, and the coin becomes translucent like a phantom image. You can see the lines of your own palm through the metal. You watch, frozen in a state of pure disbelief as the penny dematerializes, dissolving into nothingness over the course of 5 seconds. One moment, it is a solid object in your hand. The next, your hand is empty. It didn't fall. It wasn't snatched away. It simply ceased to exist. You look up at the man, your mind reeling, unable to form a coherent thought. He looks back at you, his face an emotionless mask, and delivers the final terrifying punctuation to his demonstration. Neither you, nor anyone else on this planet, will ever see that coin again. His point has been made. This was not a threat of physical violence. It was a demonstration of absolute power over the very fabric of reality. He stands up, his movement still strangely artificial. As he glides to the door, he turns and says something utterly bizarre, a non sequitur that only deepens the mystery. My energy is running low, he says, almost as an afterthought. Must go now. He steps out into the night. You leap to the window, but he's gone. There is no sign of him, no black car, nothing. Just the empty street and the lingering, paralyzing fear. Here is the lesser-known detail that completes the story, the aftermath. Dr. Hopkins was not just scared, he was psychologically shattered. He understood the message perfectly. If they could erase a coin from existence, they could erase a person. That night he went into his study and destroyed every piece of his UFO research. Every file, every cassette tape, every note. He wiped his hands clean of the entire subject and never spoke of it again publicly for years. His family would also later report that in the weeks following the visit, their home was plagued by poltergeist-like activity. The theory that emerges from this case is that this MIB was not a government agent or a human of any kind. He was a being capable of manipulating matter and energy at a fundamental level. His final words, "My energy is running low," fuel the fringe speculation that he was a form of biological machine, an android or probe operating on a finite power source sent to deliver a message in the most effective way imaginable. This brings us to the crucial question of the whole encounter. What about the coin? Skeptics would argue it must have been a trick, a brilliant piece of sleight of hand performed with a chemical agent or a hidden device designed by a human intelligence agency to terrify a target into silence. It's plausible, but it feels insufficient to explain the totality of the event. Why the bizarre appearance, the instant arrival, the strange parting words? But if you take Hopkins' account at face value, you are left with only one conclusion. It was a genuine paranormal event. So, which is it? Was this the height of psychological warfare, an elaborate stage trick in a meticulously planned government operation? Or was it a calm, quiet, and absolutely terrifying demonstration of power from something not of this world? The chilling precision of the Hopkins encounter, with its impossible arrival and reality-bending demonstration, might feel like a uniquely American kind of paranoia. It's a story steeped in the atmosphere of the 1970s, a time of widespread mistrust in official institutions. It would be easy to dismiss the entire phenomenon as a product of American Cold War fears and a deep-seated suspicion of government secrecy. But the truth is, these silent figures in black are not confined by our borders. Their eerie presence, their dark suits, and their chilling warnings have been reported from the misty valleys of Wales to the desolate plains of Australia and the dense farmlands of Brazil. The shadow they cast is a global one. Let's travel across the Atlantic. You find yourself in Broadhaven, a quiet seaside village in Wales, in the year 1977. The area is in the grip of a massive UFO flap, what locals have dubbed the Broadhaven Triangle. It began when 14 school children all saw a silver dome-topped craft land in a field next to their school, an event that made headlines across the country. But for one local family, the Coombs, the strangeness comes home. After experiencing a series of terrifying sightings of a large cigar-shaped craft and a 7-foot-tall silver-suited figure near their remote farmhouse, they receive a different kind of visitor. You are Pauline Coombs. One evening, there is a knock at your door. You open it to find 2 men. They are both unusually tall and dressed in immaculate black suits, but their lapels are cut in a wide, slightly old-fashioned style. Their faces are pale, almost waxen, and they have an air of strange formal authority. They introduce themselves as being from the Ministry of Defense, but they provide no identification. They drive a black high-end Jaguar, a detail that roots the encounter firmly in Britain. They begin to question you and your husband about what you saw, but their questions are bizarre. They seem designed not to gather information but to confuse you, to make you doubt your own senses. They ask leading questions, twist your words, and maintain an unnerving, emotionless composure. The entire encounter feels less like an official investigation and more like a psychological test, a deliberate attempt to discredit you in your own mind. When they leave, you are left with the distinct feeling that you were not visited by civil servants, but by something pretending to be. Now, let's journey to the other side of the world. You are in the vast, empty heart of Australia, driving across the Nullarbor Plain in January of 1988. You are Faye Knowles traveling with your 2 adult sons, Patrick and Sean, and your 2 dogs. In the dead of night, your car is suddenly bathed in an impossibly bright light. A glowing egg-shaped object descends from the sky and begins to harass your vehicle. It lands on your roof with a heavy thud, and you feel the car being lifted from the road. A high-pitched, piercing sound fills the cabin, causing you all intense pain. After a terrifying few moments, the car is dropped back onto the asphalt, blowing out a tire. The object hovers for a moment longer, then shoots away into the darkness. When you finally stop to inspect the damage, the car is covered in a fine, black ash, and the interior smells of ozone. Your story becomes a national media sensation. You are hounded by journalists and thrust into the spotlight. But amidst this public chaos, a quieter, more sinister presence makes itself known. You begin to notice you are being followed by dark, official-looking sedans. Your son, Sean, reports being cornered at a remote gas station by a man in a black suit who simply stood and stared at him, his face a complete blank, before getting into a car and driving off. It's a different style of MIB encounter, less about direct verbal threats and more about psychological pressure through constant, unnerving surveillance. The message is clear without a single word being spoken. We are watching you. Finally, we go back in time to 1957, to a farm in São Francisco de Sales, Brazil. You are a 23-year-old farmer named Antonio Vilas Boas. Your story is now infamous in UFO lore, one of the first detailed alien abduction accounts. But it's what happens after your alleged ordeal aboard a strange craft that connects to our investigation. Shaken and suffering from what would later be identified as symptoms of radiation sickness, you seek medical help. Your story, backed by physical evidence, begins to attract attention. It's not long before you receive a visit from men in dark formal suits who identify themselves as military officials. They subject you to a long, grueling interrogation. They are not interested in your well-being. They are interested in what you know. They warn you and the doctor who examined you in no uncertain terms to never speak of the incident again. Their authority is absolute, their message chillingly effective. Here, a fascinating, lesser-known theory emerges from these global accounts: the idea of cultural cloaking. Notice the variations. In the US, the MIBs drive classic Cadillacs, symbols of American power and affluence. In Britain, they appear in a Jaguar, a mark of establishment authority. In Brazil, they adopt the guise of the military, a powerful and often feared institution at the time. The fringe theory suggests that the MIB phenomenon, whatever it is intelligent. It adapts its presentation to fit the cultural context, using the symbols of power and fear most potent in that specific society to achieve its goal. The core components, the black suit, the pale skin, the emotionless demeanor, remain constant, but the superficial details are tailored for maximum psychological impact. This leads us to a pivotal question about the entire mystery. Does this apparent ability to adapt to local cultures suggest a single, unified, and highly sophisticated intelligence behind the Men in Black phenomenon? Is it one global organization, be it human or otherwise, that carefully crafts its approach for each encounter? Or is the opposite true? Are we simply seeing unrelated events and lumping them together? Perhaps the men in Wales really were from the Ministry of Defense, the men in Australia from their own intelligence service, and the men in Brazil from their military, all using similar heavy-handed tactics to suppress inconvenient stories. Is the global pattern of the Man in Black a genuine observable phenomenon? Or is it a narrative we have constructed, forcing disparate events into a single, convenient, and terrifying box? That final question, whether we're dealing with one global mystery or many local ones, forces us to put aside the paranormal for a moment and look at the most straightforward suspect, our own governments. Before you leap to conclusions about ultra-terrestrials or biological robots, you have to follow the first rule of any good investigation. You look for the human motive. You have to peel back the layers of official secrecy and enter the world of Cold War intelligence, a world of smoke and mirrors where the truth was a commodity to be protected at any cost. And in that world, you will find a very real, very human candidate for the Man in Black. To begin, you have to understand the time. It's the late 1940s and 1950s. The world is cleaved in two by the Iron Curtain. The United States is gripped by the Red Scare, a deep and pervasive paranoia about Soviet infiltration and espionage. School children are practicing duck and cover drills under their desks. Your neighbor could be a communist spy. In this atmosphere of suffocating anxiety, strange lights in the sky are not just a curiosity, they are a direct and immediate national security threat. Is it a new kind of Soviet bomber, capable of delivering a nuclear payload? Is it an advanced reconnaissance craft, mapping out our missile silos and air bases? The stakes could not be higher. When a problem involves national security and the United States Air Force, one particular organization is tasked with handling it. They are not as famous as the CIA or the FBI, but they are just as serious. They are the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, or AFOSI. This is a real agency. Their mandate then, as it is now, was to serve as the Air Force's primary criminal, fraud, and counterintelligence investigating service. They were, and are, the Air Force's internal police and spy agency. When reports of unidentified flying objects began to flood in, especially when these objects were seen near sensitive military installations like nuclear weapons depots or experimental aircraft testing grounds, the job of investigating fell squarely on their shoulders. So you are a newly minted AFOSI special agent. You're handed a file. A civilian or perhaps an off-duty airman has reported seeing a strange metallic craft moving at impossible speeds near your base. Your job is to go and talk to this person. You don't wear your military uniform. That's too official, too intimidating. It might attract unwanted attention. Instead, you put on a conservative business suit, a dark suit. You drive a standard-issue government vehicle, a black sedan. You arrive at the witness's home unannounced. You flash your credentials and begin the interview. You are a trained investigator. You know how to control a conversation, how to ask pointed questions, how to gauge a person's credibility. You also have access to information. You know the witness's name, their occupation, and the details of their initial report. To them, your knowledge might seem uncanny. You explain to them that what they saw could have national security implications. You tell them, in firm but professional language, that it is imperative they do not discuss this incident with anyone, not their friends, not their family, and certainly not the press. You are not threatening their family's well-being in a cryptic manner. You are giving them a standard, if stern, national security briefing. After the interview, you get back in your black car and drive away to file your report. To the witness, a person likely already in a state of shock and anxiety, have you not just performed every single basic step of a Man in Black encounter? This is the foundation of the government agent theory, and it is compellingly simple. It reframes the MIB from a paranormal entity into a misunderstood government functionary. But we can take it a step further. This is where we uncover a lesser-known detail of these early investigations. The official goal was to investigate, But an unofficial, and perhaps more important goal was to debunk. The Air Force was terrified of two things: public panic and the possibility of the Soviets using a flood of UFO reports to overwhelm US intelligence channels. Therefore, an agent's job wasn't just to collect data, but to manage the narrative. Official documents from the era show that investigators were encouraged to find conventional explanations for sightings. It was better for everyone if the witness could be convinced they just saw the planet Venus or a weather balloon. From here, it's a short leap to a more compelling fringe theory, that within a FOSI or a similar intelligence agency, there existed an unofficial off-the-books unit. This wouldn't be the unit that handles routine sightings. This would be the special unit, the troubleshooters sent in to deal with the truly problematic cases, the ones involving multiple, highly credible witnesses, physical evidence, or sightings over top-secret facilities. Their job would be to ensure silence by any means necessary, using tactics that could never be officially sanctioned. They would be masters of psychological intimidation, authorized to bend and perhaps even break the rules to protect state secrets. They would be the real men in black. This theory explains so much. It explains their apparent omniscience. It explains their air of authority. It explains their demands for silence. It grounds the entire phenomenon in the real-world context of Cold War counterintelligence. And yet, it has a fatal flaw. It cannot account for the high strangeness. It falls apart the moment you try to fit it to the truly bizarre cases. How does a secret FOSI unit explain the glowing eyes and telepathic warnings Albert Bender reported? How does it explain the chalk-white skin, the lipstick, and the dematerializing coin from Dr. Hopkins's encounter? Why would a government agent claim his energy is running low? This leads us to the critical question that fractures this entire line of reasoning. If the MIBs are simply government agents, why are their methods so often theatrical, bizarre, and ultimately counterproductive? A professional agent's goal is to de-escalate a situation and ensure discretion. Yet the MIB's tactics seem almost perfectly designed to do the opposite, to traumatize the witness, create an unforgettable and terrifying memory, and fuel a mythology that has lasted for over 70 years. Why would a secret government program, designed to suppress the UFO story, end up creating one of its most famous and enduring chapters, regardless of the secret they were protecting, be it a crashed alien craft or a top-secret experimental jet? The methods the men in black employed point to a sophisticated and deeply disturbing strategy. The theatricality, the strange mannerisms, the blend of omniscience and bizarre ineptitude. These are not the hallmarks of a standard debriefing. They are the tools of a specific trade, one that operates not on the body but on the mind. To understand the MIBs, you have to stop thinking like a UFO investigator and start thinking like an intelligence analyst. You have to look at their actions through the cold, clear lens of psychological warfare. Psychological operations, or PSYOPs, are a well-established and frequently used tool of statecraft. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented military and intelligence doctrine. A PSYOP is any action taken to convey selected information and indicators to a target audience, to influence their emotions, motives, objective reasoning, and ultimately their behavior. It can be as simple as dropping propaganda leaflets over enemy territory, promising safety to those who surrender. It can be more complex, like the United States Army's Operation Wandering Soul during the Vietnam War, where helicopters would broadcast eerie, ghostly recordings of synthesized voices pretending to be fallen Viet Cong soldiers, designed to prey on traditional beliefs and erode enemy morale. The goal is always the same: to win the battle by breaking the enemy's will to fight without firing a shot. Now let's re-examine the classic MIB encounter, as if it were a meticulously planned PSYOP. You are no longer just looking at the facts of the case, but the psychological effects on the target, the UFO witness. First, you have the display of omniscience. The MIBs arrive knowing the witness's name, their job, the names of their family members, and precise, often unpublished, details of their sighting. From a paranormal perspective, this is evidence of telepathy or supernatural power. From a PSYOP perspective, it's the result of good, old-fashioned intelligence gathering. Surveillance, background checks, Perhaps a tap on the phone line. The information itself isn't the weapon, the deployment of the information is. By revealing what they know in a calm, matter-of-fact way, they create an immediate and overwhelming power imbalance. The witness feels completely transparent, totally vulnerable. Their private world has been breached, and they are rendered powerless before the conversation has even truly begun. Second, you have the high strangeness, the theatricality. This is the element that seems to contradict the government agent theory, but through the lens of a psyop, it becomes the most important part of the operation. Remember Dr. Hopkins's visitor, with his chalk-white skin and lipstick, or Bender's glowing-eyed beings? A standard government agent wants to appear normal to gain compliance, but a psyop operative might want to do the exact opposite. The goal here is not just to silence the witness, but to comprehensively discredit them. Imagine you are that witness. You've had this terrifying encounter. You decide to defy the warning and go to the press or the authorities. What do you say? Two men who looked like walking corpses and drove a brand new 1955 Cadillac told me to shut up. Who is going to believe you? Your own story becomes your undoing. The bizarre details of the encounter are a built-in self-destruct mechanism for your credibility. The psyop has not only silenced you, but it has also preemptively destroyed any platform you might try to speak from. Third, the tactic of isolation. MIBs almost always appear when the witness is alone, separating them from any potential support. Their warnings are vague, personal, and often directed at the well-being of the witness's family. This instills a deep, gnawing paranoia. The threat is not a formal legal action, which could be fought in court, but an unspoken, ambiguous menace. This forces the witness to retreat inward. They become afraid to confide in anyone, even their loved ones, for fear of putting them in danger. They are an island of terror, and their silence is guaranteed. This leads us to a broader, more chilling theory. What if the psyop wasn't just targeted at individual witnesses? What if the real target was the entire civilian UFO research community? Think about it. By injecting these bizarre, terrifying stories into the community, you achieve several goals at once. You sow rampant paranoia and distrust. You send researchers on wild goose chases trying to track down these phantom men in black. And most effectively, you taint the entire field of ufology with the stench of absurdity. You make it a subject that no serious mainstream scientist or journalist would want to touch. The men in black in this view are a weaponized myth. They are a virus of disbelief, engineered to infect the subject of UFOs and cripple it from the inside out, ensuring it remains forever on the fringes of society. Albert Bender's public shutdown of his global UFO network wasn't just the silencing of one man. It was a shot across the bow to every other researcher out there, a demonstration of what happens when you dig too deep. This psyop framework provides a chillingly rational explanation for some of the most irrational-seeming aspects of the MIB phenomenon. But it also raises a profound question about the scope and intent of such a program. If this is a government psychological operation, it is one of incredible complexity, expense, and longevity, running for over 7 decades. So who is the ultimate target? Is it merely tactical, aimed at silencing a few key witnesses here and there who get too close to a secret? Or is the operation strategic? Is the true audience for this elaborate, terrifying theater all of us? Has the myth of the man in black itself become the message? A piece of modern American folklore, a ghost story whispered in our collective unconscious, designed to serve as a permanent unspoken warning to anyone who might see something in the sky. Keep it to yourself. You know who's listening. The idea of the men in black as a long-running psychological operation is a powerful one. It provides a human-centric, if deeply sinister, explanation for decades of bizarre encounters. But what if we've been looking at the psyop from the wrong angle? We've been assuming their goal is to suppress a story, to take a real event, a UFO sighting, and force it into silence. What if the strategy is even more complex? A mirror image of what we've been considering. What if their goal isn't to suppress a story at all, but to create one? What if the men in black aren't covering up the truth about aliens, but are instead actively spreading lies about them to hide a far more tangible secret? To understand this theory, you have to first appreciate what needed to be hidden. You're an investigator, But this time your focus isn't on UFO reports. It's on declassified aerospace projects from the Cold War. You look at the schematics for the U-2 spy plane, a craft that could fly at 70,000 feet, far higher than any known aircraft in the 1950s. You look at the SR-71 Blackbird, a titanium marvel that could cross the continental United States in about an hour, glowing with friction heat as it flew at over 2,000 miles per hour. You look at the bizarre angular shape of the F-117 Nighthawk, the first stealth fighter, a craft that looked like a jagged piece of obsidian and was utterly alien to anyone who saw it in the sky before it was revealed to the public. For decades, these and dozens of other secret aircraft were the real unidentified flying objects. They were tested in the skies over the American Southwest and elsewhere, and sightings were inevitable. A rancher, a private pilot, a family on a camping trip, they would look up and see a silent black triangle, or a craft moving at impossible speeds, or something hovering without sound. These sightings posed a catastrophic risk to national security. How do you protect a multi-billion-dollar cutting-edge technology program when the public keeps accidentally seeing it? Telling the witness they saw nothing is often ineffective. They know what they saw. Threatening them into silence can work, but it can also backfire, making them more determined to talk. This is where the theory of the MIB as a disinformation artist comes in. It's a strategy of brilliant, cynical misdirection. Imagine the scenario. A credible witness, say a local doctor, sees a black, triangular craft hovering silently outside his town. He reports it. The report gets flagged because a top-secret prototype was being tested in that area at that time. You can't let the story get out. You can't have journalists or Soviet spies sniffing around. So you don't send agents to shut the witness up. You send agents to give him an entirely different, much crazier story. You are that man in black. You show up at the doctor's house. You don't tell him he saw a weather balloon. You confirm his suspicion that he saw something extraordinary. You lean in and say, "Doctor, what you saw was not one of ours. We are from a special section of the government tasked with monitoring extraterrestrial visitors. The beings who pilot those triangular craft have a treaty with us. You have seen something you were not meant to see. And for your own safety, you must remain silent." You might even feed him more details. Nonsense about their biology, their homeworld, their intentions. You present him with a myth gift-wrapped as a state secret. Now analyze the result of this tactic. Firstly, you have validated the witness's experience, making him feel special, like he's been let into the inner circle. This can be a powerful tool for ensuring cooperation. Secondly, and most importantly, if the doctor defies you and talks, what is his story now? It's not a sober account of a strange triangular aircraft. It's a wild tale of aliens, government treaties, and men in black. He sounds completely unhinged. The media will dismiss him as a crank. UFO researchers might take him seriously, but they will be chasing a phantom alien conspiracy, sending them down a rabbit hole that leads them 1,000 miles away from the real secret. The new stealth bomber being tested out of a Nevada airbase. In this version of the story, the MIBs are not intimidating enforcers of silence. They are actors. They are disinformation specialists, and the high strangeness of their appearance and behavior is part of the performance. The robotic voice, the odd complexion, the paranormal tricks, it's all part of the script, designed to make the alien narrative they are planting more believable to the witness, and therefore more unbelievable to everyone else. They are not trying to cover up a visit from Zeta Reticuli. They are using the entire mythology of aliens and government cover-ups as a smokescreen to hide the tangible terrestrial secret of a new piece of military hardware. They are hiding a real secret inside an invented one. This is an incredibly cynical, but ruthlessly effective counterintelligence strategy. It weaponizes folklore. It turns the public's fascination with the unknown against itself. But if this disinformation theory is true, it presents a profound and perhaps unsolvable problem for anyone trying to get to the bottom of the UFO mystery. Where do you draw the line? If you accept that at least some MIB encounters are staged events designed to mislead, how can you ever trust the details of any high strangeness case? Does this theory suggest that the most bizarre and compelling stories, the ones that feel the most authentically alien, could in fact be the most likely to be clever government fabrications? It creates a maze of mirrors where every piece of evidence could be a plant, and every witness a pawn in a game they don't even know they are playing. This dizzying idea that government agents might be actively inventing and spreading bizarre stories to hide their secrets might sound like the plot of a paranoid thriller. It's easy to dismiss it as a step too far, an unsubstantiated leap into conspiratorial fantasy. But it's not. The uncomfortable truth is that we have meticulously documented, declassified proof that agencies of the United States government have used these exact tactics against their own citizens. You don't need to speculate. You just need to open the files of a program whose name has become synonymous with the abuse of state power, COINTELPRO. You are now sitting not in a dusty UFO archive, but in a congressional hearing room in the mid-1970s. You are reading the findings of the Church Committee, the Senate investigation that blew the lid off decades of domestic intelligence abuses. And you are learning about COINTELPRO, an acronym for Counterintelligence Program. This was a series of covert and often illegal projects conducted by the FBI between 1956 and 1971. Its stated objective was to protect national security by exposing, disrupting, misdirecting, discrediting, or otherwise neutralizing domestic groups and individuals that the Bureau deemed subversive. The list of targets is a staggering who's who of 20th century American social and political movements. COINTELPRO went after the civil rights movement, most famously targeting Martin Luther King Jr. with wiretaps, blackmail, and a poison pen letter infamously urging him to take his own life. It targeted anti-Vietnam War protesters, feminist organizations, the Black Panther Party, and even seemingly benign groups that J. Edgar Hoover simply didn't like. This is not theory. This is historical fact, admitted to by the FBI itself, and the tactics they used are a playbook for the Men in Black phenomenon. Let us dissect the methods of COINTELPRO and hold them up to the MIB encounters we've been examining. The parallels are not just similar, they are nearly identical. A key tactic of COINTELPRO was psychological harassment. Agents would make anonymous late-night phone calls. They would conduct intimidating interviews designed to frighten and unsettle their targets. They used their authority to create an atmosphere of constant looming threat. This is the MIB's core function: the unannounced visit, the vague but terrifying warnings, the creation of intense, personal fear. Another preferred tactic was discrediting. COINTELPRO agents were masters of reputational destruction. They forged letters, planted false stories with friendly journalists, and spread vicious rumors. One of the most insidious of these techniques was known as bad jacketing, where agents would spread a rumor within a group that one of its key members was secretly a police informant. The goal was to isolate that person, destroy their credibility, and let the group's own paranoia tear it apart. Now think about the MIB psyop we discussed. The entire purpose of the bizarre theatricality, the strange clothes, the robotic speech, is to bad jacket the UFO witness. It makes their story, and by extension the witness themselves, sound crazy, effectively neutralizing them within their own community and in the eyes of the public. Then there is the use of disinformation to disrupt. COINTELPRO would send forged communications between leaders of different groups to manufacture rivalries and infighting. They would inject false information into a movement to send it chasing its own tail, wasting its energy and resources. This is a perfect match for the theory of the MIB as a disinformation artist. Planting a fabricated story about aliens and government treaties with a witness to a secret aircraft test is a classic disruption technique. It misdirects the entire UFO research community, sending them down a dead-end path while the real secret remains safe. The connection is so direct it has led to this stark theory. The Men in Black phenomenon was not just like COINTELPRO. It was either a forgotten plank of the program or a parallel operation run by a different agency like Air Force Intelligence using the very same playbook. From this perspective, the burgeoning UFO community of the 1950s and 60s was a perfect target. It was a decentralized civilian intelligence gathering network that was inherently anti-authoritarian. It had the potential to uncover state secrets or incite public panic. It was, in the paranoid calculus of the Cold War, a subversive group that needed to be neutralized. The MIB was simply the tool designed for that unique battlefield. This brings us to a crucial point in the timeline. The original COINTELPRO was officially exposed and terminated in 1971. Public outrage and congressional oversight supposedly put an end to these kinds of domestic operations. And yet, the reports of MIB encounters did not stop in 1971. They continued, with cases like Dr. Herbert Hopkins' visit occurring in 1976, 5 years after the program was officially dead. This raises a deeply unsettling question. Did COINTELPRO really end? Or did it simply evolve? When an intelligence agency develops a set of tactics that are proven to be highly effective, do they simply abandon them because they are exposed? Or is it more likely that the program just goes deeper, sheds its name, and continues its work under a new, more secret classification? Could the MIB encounters reported after 1971 be the lingering ghosts of that program? Evidence that the ideological machinery built to monitor and disrupt perceived threats to the status quo was never truly dismantled? Perhaps it was just pointed at a new set of targets, forever operating in the shadows of American life. The COINTELPRO connection provides a powerful human-level explanation for the Men in Black. It's a theory grounded in documented history, and it paints a grimly plausible picture of a government using sophisticated psychological tactics to neutralize a perceived threat. It's neat, it's logical, and it accounts for the MIB's motives and methods, but it has a critical weakness, a flaw that runs deeper than any declassified file. The entire government agent theory, whether it's a FOSI or a COINTELPRO-style operation, rests on one fundamental assumption, that the Men in Black are human actors playing a role. And there are details in the reports, small, persistent, terrifying details, that suggest they are not acting at all. To see this flaw, you have to look closer. You have to push past the broad strokes of the black suit and the dark car and focus on the beings themselves. You have to examine the uncanny valley they inhabit, the subtle and not-so-subtle ways in which their performance of humanity seems to fail. The government PSYOP theory can explain the intimidation and the disinformation, but it begins to creak and groan under the weight of the sheer biological strangeness reported by so many witnesses. It's time to pivot from political science back to forensic observation. You find yourself on Long Island, New York in 1967. You are in the home of the Christensen family. The mother, Jane, has been a local curiosity, claiming to be in telepathic communication with a being from another world. One day, a man arrives at her door. He fits the general MIB profile, but the details are all wrong, twisted into a far more bizarre shape. He introduces himself as Mr. Apal. He is unnaturally short and has a very dark complexion, almost like a chemical tan. His facial features are sharp and pointed, with high cheekbones and slanted, piercing eyes. He's wearing a thick black coat that seems far too heavy for the weather, and on his head is a black cap with a shiny visor from which a length of wire runs down into the collar of his coat. He begins to speak, and any thought you might have had that this was a normal, if intimidating government agent evaporates. His voice is not the typical flat monotone. It is a shockingly high-pitched, sing-song, almost effeminate voice that is utterly at odds with his menacing aura. It's a voice that doesn't sound like it belongs to a human body. As he talks, he moves with a strange, shuffling gait, and at one point he grimaces and complains of a problem with his leg, having to stop and adjust it as if it were a poorly fitting prosthesis. The entire encounter is a masterpiece of high strangeness. The story of Mr. Apal is not an outlier. It's a particularly vivid example of the glitches that plague the MIBs. These are not mistakes an actor would make. They feel more like system errors. Let's break down these recurring non-human traits. First, there is the matter of their disguise. In many accounts, the MIB's clothes, while clean, are described as being strangely out of fashion or ill-fitting. More telling are the reports of their hair. Witnesses often get the distinct impression that the MIB is wearing a wig, one that is a little too perfect, a little too black, and sometimes sitting just slightly crooked on their head as if concealing a skull that isn't quite the right shape for a human hairstyle. It's the kind of mistake a non-human intelligence might make, working from a limited or outdated understanding of human appearance. Then there is the skin. We've touched on this before, but it bears repeating. It is almost never described as normal. It's the dead white, chalky skin of Dr. Hopkins's visitor, or the strange, dark tan of Mr. Apal. It's often described as lacking pores, wrinkles, or any of the subtle imperfections of real human skin. It has a waxy, plastic, or clay-like texture, as if you are looking at a mannequin that has been crudely animated. Their physical movements are another major red flag. The stiff, robotic gait is a classic trope. They glide more than they walk. Their joints seem to move with an unnatural rigidity. The detail of Mr. Apal's malfunctioning leg is particularly revealing. It's hard to imagine a human agent deliberately faking a limp in such a bizarre way. It's much easier to imagine a biomechanical construct experiencing a fault in one of its servo motors. Finally, there is the voice. The simple, expressionless monotone could be a deliberate interrogation tactic, but the high-pitched, metallic sing-song voice reported in cases like the Christensen visit is something else entirely. It suggests a mechanical origin, a primitive voice synthesizer that cannot properly replicate the complex tones and pitches of human speech. When you assemble all these physical glitches, the bad wigs, the plastic skin, the robotic walk, the synthesized voice, the government actor theory starts to look profoundly inadequate. A new, more radical theory emerges. These are not flaws in a performance. They are the biological or mechanical realities of what the men in black are. They are not humans pretending to be strange. They are non-human entities failing to be perfectly human. They are androids, clones, or some other form of artificial biological construct, and the uncanny valley is the gap between their programming and our reality. This brings us to a critical question that strikes at the heart of the PSYOP theory. Psychological operations are about control, precision, and achieving a desired effect. If you, as a director of a top-secret government program, wanted to silence a UFO witness, why would you choose an agent with such obvious, inhuman flaws? Why dispatch a being that looks and sounds so artificial that its very presence introduces a massive, unpredictable variable into the encounter? Wouldn't it be infinitely more effective and reliable to use a highly trained, completely normal-looking human actor? Unless, of course, you don't have that option. Are these inhuman glitches a sign of a surprisingly sloppy and theatrical government psyop? Or are they the unavoidable, authentic, and terrifying signature of what the men in black truly are? The question of why a sophisticated psychological operation would employ such flawed, inhuman agents is a serious crack in the foundation of the government theory. It's a paradox. You want to be intimidating and effective, yet you send in a being that seems to be glitching, on the verge of falling apart. But perhaps we are looking for the flaw in the wrong place. We've been analyzing the MIBs as if they are objects on a laboratory table, being observed under the clear, steady light of normal reality. What if that light itself is warped? What if the strangeness of the encounter is not emanating from the men in black, but from a fundamental distortion in the witness's own perception of reality? To explore this, you have to place yourself back in the shoes of the witness. You are at home. It's a normal evening. But then, a few moments before the knock on the door, you feel a shift. The air in the room becomes still, heavy. The familiar ambient sounds of your life, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the ticking of the clock on the wall, begin to fade into an unnerving silence. You feel a strange sense of detachment, as if you are watching yourself in a film. Time itself seems to become thick and slow, like molasses. You are still in your living room, but you are not entirely there anymore. You have, without realizing it, slipped into a different state of being. This phenomenon has a name. It was coined by the British researcher Jenny Randles, who, after studying hundreds of accounts of UFO and other paranormal encounters, noticed this recurring, dreamlike prelude. She called it the Oz factor. The name is a perfect analogy. Just like Dorothy, who is lifted by a tornado from the familiar black and white reality of Kansas and dropped into the surreal, hyper-real Technicolor world of Oz, the witness is temporarily lifted out of the normal stream of consensual reality. They enter a bubble of altered perception, a localized zone where the rules of time, space, and sensation no longer seem to apply. The symptoms of the Oz factor are remarkably consistent. Witnesses report an overwhelming sense of being isolated, as if the rest of the world has momentarily ceased to exist. They describe the environment taking on a hyper-real, or, conversely, a flat and stage-like quality. They often feel an inappropriate sense of calm and detachment in a situation that should be terrifying. And most notably, they experience profound distortions in the perception of time. Either it slows down dramatically, allowing them to notice impossibly small details, or they experience missing time, where minutes or even hours seem to vanish from their memory. Now, this might sound like pure fantasy, but the concept of altered states of consciousness is a well-established scientific fact. Your brain is not a passive video camera, recording an objective reality. It is an active interpreter, constantly building a model of the world based on sensory input. And that model is fragile. We know that extreme stress, trauma, sensory deprivation, or even intense focus can trigger dissociative states. Neurologists and psychologists have terms for these experiences: derealization, the feeling that the world around you is not real, and depersonalization, the feeling that you are detached from your own body and mind. Seeing a UFO, or opening your door to a terrifying non-human entity, would certainly qualify as the kind of extreme shock that could trigger such a profound psychological response. So let's look at the men in black through the lens of the Oz factor. What if their inhuman strangeness is not an objective fact, but a subjective perception created by the witness's altered state? The MIB's stiff, robotic movements could be the result of your brain's inability to properly process motion in this state. His flat, synthesized voice might be your own auditory perception going haywire, stripping a human voice of its normal warmth and inflection. The waxy, featureless skin, perhaps your brain, overloaded by the shock of the encounter, simplifies the visual data, smoothing over the subtle details of a human face until it resembles a mannequin. The sudden, impossible way they appear and disappear could be explained by those moments of missing time, where your brain simply wasn't recording. This theory doesn't mean the men in black are just a hallucination. It suggests that they are real, but their reality, their very nature, is so alien and so far outside our normal parameters of experience that it short-circuits our perceptual equipment. The high strangeness and the physical glitches we observe are the artifacts of that short circuit. They are the error messages that appear when our human operating system tries to load a program it was never designed to run. The MIB isn't necessarily a bad actor. Our brain is a bad translator. But this leads us to the most critical question of all. If the Oz factor is a real component of these encounters, what is its source? Is it an offensive weapon or a defense mechanism? On one hand, the Oz factor could be something the MIBs actively project, a psychic or technological field designed to scramble a witness's senses, making them an unreliable observer and muddying their memory of the event. It would be a form of advanced psychological warfare, a perceptual camouflage. On the other hand, it could be a purely internal biological phenomenon. Perhaps the Oz factor is simply a psychological circuit breaker, a defense mechanism our brain employs to protect our sanity when confronted with a reality so shattering that it threatens to break our minds. Are they deliberately manipulating our perception of reality, or is our own brain desperately trying to protect us from theirs? That question from the end of our last discussion: are the men in black manipulating our reality, or is our own brain failing to process theirs? Is a crossroads. Down one path lies a human explanation, full of government conspiracies and psychological tricks. Down the other lies something else entirely. What if the answer to the question is both? What if their very presence is an act of manipulation, a fundamental intrusion that warps the fabric of our reality, and our brains, in turn, break down under the strain? To even consider this, you have to throw away the old maps. You have to discard the simple binary choice between government agent and alien from space. You have to entertain a third option, one that is far more strange and far closer to home. To do that, you need to acquaint yourself with the work of John Keel. Keel was a journalist and investigator who in the 1960s and 70s immersed himself in the world of high strangeness, most famously chronicling the bizarre events in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, that would be immortalized in his book, The Mothman Prophecies. Keel was not a simple believer. He was a pattern seeker, and the pattern he saw did not point to nuts and bolts spaceships from other planets. It pointed to something else, a phenomenon he dubbed ultra-terrestrial. The extraterrestrial hypothesis assumes that these beings come from another planet, crossing the vast, empty distances of interstellar space. Keel's ultra-terrestrial hypothesis is radically different. It suggests that they are not from out there at all. They are from right here. They are interdimensional, coexisting with us on Earth in a parallel reality, a different frequency, completely invisible to us most of the time. Before you dismiss this as pure science fiction, it's worth noting that mainstream theoretical physics has been wrestling with this same idea for decades. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every quantum event creates a branching set of new universes. String theory, in its various forms, requires the existence of up to 10 or 11 dimensions to be mathematically consistent. The idea of parallel realities is not just the domain of paranormal researchers, it's a very real possibility being explored at the cutting edge of science. Imagine our reality is just one page in an infinite book. The ultra-terrestrials are simply the beings living on the other pages, and occasionally they find a way to bleed through. This is the framework Keel used to build a unified theory of the paranormal. In his view, UFOs, men in black, Bigfoot, poltergeists, even the fairies and goblins of ancient folklore, were all just different manifestations of the same core phenomenon. Ultra-terrestrials temporarily intruding into our world. And this is where the strange, glitchy nature of the MIBs starts to make a terrifying kind of sense. According to Keel, when these entities cross over into our dimension, they are out of phase. They are struggling to operate under a set of physical laws that are not their own. Their physical bodies, if you can even call them that, are temporary, unstable projections of energy. Think of them like a flickering hologram. This would explain everything. The waxy artificial skin isn't a disguise. It's an imperfectly rendered surface. The stiff robotic movements are the result of a being that doesn't fully understand how to operate in our field of gravity and friction. The strange, synthesized voice is the sound of a consciousness trying to manipulate our airwaves to produce speech. Dr. Hopkins's visitor claiming his energy is running low is, in this model, giving a literal statement of fact. His projection is failing, and he needs to retreat back to his home dimension to recharge. The dematerializing coin isn't a trick. It's a demonstration of their native ability to manipulate matter, to simply push an object from our reality back into theirs. Keel also had a unique take on their motive. He did not see them as benevolent space brothers or hostile invaders. He saw them as something far more unsettling. Cosmic pranksters, masters of deception. He believed their primary goal was psychological manipulation. They are, in his words, a cosmic Gilbert and Sullivan repertory company, putting on a grand, absurd, and often terrifying show for our benefit. They study us, and they reflect our own beliefs and fears back at us. In a religious era, they manifest as angels and demons. In a technological era, they manifest as aliens and men in black. The MIBs in this cosmic theater are the sinister stagehands, the menacing figures in the wings who show up to make sure the actors, the witnesses, don't get too far off script. Their goal isn't to suppress a grand truth, but to perpetuate a grand confusion. If Keel's radical theory holds even a shred of truth, it completely reframes our place in the universe. We are not the sole masters of this planet. We are sharing our home with a vast, unseen, and ancient intelligence that can phase in and out of our reality at will. This leads to a profound and deeply humbling question. If we are indeed living alongside these ultra-terrestrials, what does that make us? Are we their equals, their subjects, or are we something else entirely? Are we living inside a kind of cosmic nature preserve, a planetary terrarium, going about our lives largely oblivious to the intelligent, powerful, and utterly incomprehensible observers watching us from the other side of the glass? John Keel's ultra-terrestrial hypothesis gives us a framework for the sheer, chaotic strangeness of the men in black. It paints a picture of a world teeming with interdimensional entities, with the MIBs acting as absurd and menacing stage managers in a cosmic theater of the absurd. It's a compelling, all-encompassing theory. But what if the truth is less chaotic? What if the phenomenon isn't random at all? What if the MIB's bizarre attributes and specific actions are not the result of a cosmic prank, but are instead the cold, calculated execution of a very specific mission, orchestrated by a single non-human intelligence with a clear and persistent agenda here on Earth. This brings us to one of the most popular and unnerving theories in all of ufology, the MIBs as alien enforcers. In this model, you set aside the idea of them being government agents or ethereal ultra-terrestrials. You look at them as something much more direct. They are the security guards, the cleanup crew, for an active and ongoing alien presence on our planet. Their job is not to manage human belief systems in general, but to manage the secrecy of their own specific operation. To understand this, you have to first put yourself in the shoes of a non-human intelligence trying to operate on a foreign, potentially hostile world. You have a mission, perhaps it's observation, resource assessment, or the much theorized genetic hybridization program. This mission requires extensive fieldwork, but you can't do it yourself. Maybe our atmosphere is toxic to you. Maybe our bacteria and viruses are lethal. Or maybe it's just inefficient and risky for you, the highly advanced scientists and planners, to personally handle every interaction on the ground. You would do what any intelligent planner would do. You would build a tool for the job. You would use remote proxies. We do this all the time. We send robotic rovers to Mars, unmanned drones into dangerous airspace, and submersible probes into the crushing depths of the ocean. It is a completely logical and efficient way to operate. An alien civilization would likely do the same. They wouldn't walk among us. They would send an intermediary, a probe, a drone, a purpose-built biological machine designed to withstand our environment and interface with its inhabitants. They would send the men in black. This single idea, that the MIBs are not the aliens themselves, but are instead custom-made biological robots or androids, is the key that unlocks so many of the deepest puzzles of the phenomenon. Suddenly, all of their inhuman glitches are no longer confusing flaws in a disguise. They are the predictable limitations of a machine. Think of the reports of their waxy, artificial-looking skin. This could be the result of a synthetic biological medium, a sort of living plastic, or the product of a rapid cloning process that can approximate a human form, but cannot perfect the subtle, living texture of real skin. Think of their stiff, robotic movements and their flat, monotone voices. This suggests a being with limited social programming. They are not designed for casual conversation. They are designed to deliver a specific message of intimidation and then leave. Their software package for human interaction is the bare-bones version, just functional enough to achieve the mission objective. Their famous inability to handle simple human customs becomes instantly clear. The MIB who tried to drink Jell-O or was baffled by a ballpoint pen was not an inept human spy. It was a machine encountering a variable for which it had no data. Its programming simply failed, resulting in a moment of absurd and revealing malfunction. And remember Dr. Hopkins's visitor, the one with the dead white skin and lipstick red lips, the one who left by saying, "My energy is running low"? This is perhaps the most direct evidence for the biological robot theory. It's the statement of a machine whose battery is dying, a temporary construct that has expended its operational power and must now return to its source. In the lore that has grown out of abduction research, these MIBs are sometimes referred to as programmables. They are seen as working in concert with the more commonly reported gray aliens. The grays are the scientists, the ones who perform the examinations and procedures aboard the crafts. The MIBs are the janitors and the enforcers, the ones sent to the surface to retrieve witnesses who remember too much, to recover accidentally lost evidence, and to ensure the entire covert operation remains just that, covert. They are different tools in the same toolbox, wielded by the same unseen hand. But this elegant theory, as neatly as it ties up all the loose ends of the MIB's strangeness, presents us with a glaring and profound question. If an alien civilization is sophisticated enough to master interstellar or interdimensional travel, to manipulate human genetics and to build biological androids, why would those androids be so conspicuously flawed? Why wouldn't they be perfect replicas, indistinguishable from real human beings? There are two possible answers, each one unsettling in its own way. The first is that creating a perfect living replica of a species as neurologically and biologically complex as a human is simply a technological challenge of the highest order, perhaps even for them. The glitches in this view are an unavoidable sign of their limitations. They're doing the best they can, but their copies are still imperfect. The second possibility is far more sinister. Perhaps the flaws are not a bug, but a feature. We humans have a term for the profound sense of fear and revulsion we feel when we see something that is almost human, but not quite. The uncanny valley. Is it possible that the MIBs are deliberately designed to fall into this valley? Perhaps their creators understood that a being that is subtly but terrifyingly wrong is a far more effective tool of psychological intimidation than a perfectly normal-looking human agent could ever hope to be. That final chilling thought that the inhuman strangeness of the men in black might be a deliberately engineered feature pushes them beyond the category of mere enforcers and into something far more advanced. If their creators can engineer biology to produce a specific psychological state in a target, what other fundamental forces of the universe might they command? This line of questioning forces us to let go of familiar concepts like government agents and biological robots, and to wade into the deep, dark waters of theoretical physics. It forces us to consider the possibility that the MIBs are not masters of intimidation, but masters of time and space itself. To even begin to grasp this, you first need to understand that our common-sense view of the universe is an illusion. For centuries, we saw space as a static, empty stage, and time as a universal, unyielding clock that ticked forward at the same rate for everyone. Then Albert Einstein's theory of relativity shattered that illusion. He showed us that space and time are not separate things. They are inextricably woven together into a single four-dimensional fabric, space-time. And this fabric is not static, it is dynamic. It can be bent, stretched, and warped by the presence of mass and energy. Imagine a bowling ball placed on a trampoline. The heavy ball creates a deep curve in the fabric. This is what massive objects like stars and planets do to space-time, and it's what we experience as gravity. This isn't science fiction. It is the bedrock of our modern understanding of the cosmos. Once you accept that space-time is a malleable fabric, you open the door to some truly radical possibilities, and it is in these possibilities that we find the most esoteric and mind-bending theories about the men in black. The first of these is the time traveler hypothesis. This theory suggests that the MIBs are not from another planet or another dimension, but from another time. They are human or perhaps post-human from our own distant future. They are chrononauts, temporal agents sent back to our era on a critical mission. In this view, the dawn of the nuclear age and the beginning of the modern UFO phenomenon in the mid-20th century represents a crucial nexus point in human history, a fork in the road of the timeline. The MIB's job is to be the shepherds of history, the guardians of the timeline. Their mission might be to prevent a paradox that could unravel their own existence, or to ensure that a specific sequence of events unfolds that leads to their creation. This theory explains their key attributes with an astonishing elegance. Their apparent omniscience, their knowledge of what a witness saw, isn't telepathy, it's history. They know what happened because, to them, it has already happened. They are simply reading from a report in their version of a library. Their slightly off clothing and pristine vintage cars. Perhaps these are not perfect replicas, but the best their temporal technology can do to create a convincing camouflage for the era they are visiting. And their relentless insistence on silence is not about covering up a secret from us, but about protecting the timeline from the unpredictable ripples of contamination. The witness isn't just a security risk, they are a potential paradox. But we can go deeper. We can push the idea until it becomes even more abstract and strange. What if the men in black are not agents using the laws of space-time, but are instead a direct symptom of those laws being broken? Imagine that a UFO is more than just a craft. Imagine its arrival in our vicinity, whether by traversing space, punching through from another dimension, or jumping through time, is an event of such immense energy that it puts an incredible strain on the local fabric of reality. It creates a tear, a warp, a stress fracture in space-time. According to this theory, the man in black is the universe's immune response to this trauma. He is not a being that is sent. He is a phenomenon that manifests. He is the psychic and physical scar tissue that forms around a wound in reality. This theory beautifully incorporates the Oz factor we discussed. The dreamlike, surreal quality of an MIB encounter is not a side effect. It's the primary effect. The witness feels like reality is bending because it literally is. The MIB coalesces out of this disturbance. He is a walking, talking, temporary glitch in the matrix. His inhuman features, his robotic movements, his strange voice, these are not the flaws of a biological machine, but the direct signature of a localized reality failure. When Dr. Hopkins's penny dematerialized, it wasn't a paranormal trick. It was a moment where the fundamental laws of matter broke down, a direct consequence of being in the presence of this space-time anomaly. The MIB is not a visitor to our reality. He is a piece of our reality that has temporarily stopped making sense. Whether they are disciplined temporal agents or chaotic reality glitches, these theories place the men in black in a category of existence far beyond our comprehension. They are beings who operate on a cosmic scale, for whom our linear perception of cause and effect is likely a quaint and primitive limitation, which brings us to a dizzying final question. If we are dealing with entities who can perceive and manipulate the very structure of time, what do our interactions with them truly mean? Are their warnings and actions part of some grand cosmic chess game being played across millennia, where a single move in 1953 could determine the fate of a world in 2553? Are we, in our brief, fleeting moments of existence, nothing more than pawns on a four-dimensional board, being moved by players we can't see in a game we can't possibly understand? We have chased the man in black to the very edge of theoretical physics, casting him as a traveler from the future or a living tear in the fabric of space-time. We've imagined him as a player in a cosmic chess game beyond our comprehension. These are vast, external ideas. But what if we've been searching in the wrong direction? What if the power that warps reality and plays games with our perception isn't from the future or another dimension, but from right here, inside our own heads? You are now leaving the outer cosmos and entering the inner one, the boundless, mysterious landscape of human consciousness. What if we are not the pawns in the game, but the unwitting creators of the players themselves? To start down this path, you have to accept a fundamental principle. Belief is a force of nature. Your mind is not a passive observer of reality. It is an active participant. We see this in well-documented scientific phenomena. There is the placebo effect, where a patient given a simple sugar pill but told it is a powerful new drug can experience real, measurable physiological healing. Their belief literally alters their body's chemistry. There is the opposite, the nocebo effect, where a person convinced they are cursed or have been exposed to a toxin can sicken and even die, their negative belief manifesting as physical illness. And then there is the phenomenon of mass hysteria, where a shared fear or delusion can sweep through a community, causing dozens or even hundreds of people to experience very real symptoms from fainting spells to convulsions, all with no underlying physical cause. The mind, and especially the collective mind, has the power to shape our reality in ways we are only just beginning to understand. Now let's take that principle and push it to its most extreme and esoteric conclusion. You must travel from the world of modern psychology to the mystical traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. Here you will find the concept of the tulpa. A tulpa, in these teachings, is a thought form, an entity that is brought into being through sheer, focused willpower and intense meditation. A skilled practitioner, it is said, can concentrate on a mental image of a being for so long, and with such intensity that it begins to take on a life of its own. It starts as an image in the mind, becomes a persistent hallucination, visible only to its creator, and can eventually become so dense with psychic energy that it becomes an autonomous entity capable of moving through the world and even being perceived by others who had no knowledge of its creation. It is an idea made manifest, a phantom given form. The most famous Western account of this comes from the Belgian-French explorer Alexandra David Neil. In the 1920s, while studying in Tibet, she claimed she decided to attempt the creation of a tulpa. She chose the form of a short, stout, jolly-looking friar. For months, she performed the concentration rituals, and eventually the friar began to appear. At first, he was ephemeral, but over time he became more solid, a seemingly real companion. But then, she lost control. the friar's personality began to change. He became leaner, more malevolent, his jolly expression replaced with a sinister smirk. Other people in her expedition began to see him. Her creation had become a monster, a psychic parasite she had to spend months of ritual to dissolve. Now take this strange, unsettling concept and apply it to the men in black. What if the MIB is a modern, Western, and entirely unintentional tulpa? Picture the scene. It's 1953. Albert Bender, the head of a global UFO network, publishes his cryptic warning and shuts down his entire organization after being visited by 3 shadowy men. His story rips through the nascent UFO community. This community is a perfect psychic incubator. It's a collection of people predisposed to believe in the extraordinary, already steeped in an atmosphere of government secrecy and Cold War paranoia. They are intensely focused. Their newsletters, late-night phone calls, and hushed conversations all begin to revolve around a single, terrifying idea. There are men in black suits, silencers, who are watching us, who will come for us if we get too close to the truth. This is not a single monk meditating in a cave. This is hundreds, perhaps thousands of people, all engaging in a massive, unintentional act of collective concentration. They are pouring their fear, their paranoia, their expectation, and their focused intellectual energy into a single shared thought form, the man in black. And so, the tulpa is born. It begins to manifest, first in fleeting glimpses, then in full-blown encounters. Its appearance and characteristics are drawn directly from the psychic blueprint of the community's fears. The black suit is the symbol of cold, faceless authority. The emotionless demeanor is the impersonality of the bureaucracy they feared. The strange, non-human glitches are the imperfections in the thought form, the fuzzy details in the collective nightmare. The tulpa feeds on their fear, and each new encounter it creates generates more fear, more stories, and more psychic energy, making the tulpa stronger and more real in a self-sustaining feedback loop. This theory places the monster's origin squarely within our own minds. But it also leads to a deeply philosophical question. If the man in black is a tulpa, a being literally constructed from our collective belief, does that make him any less real or any less dangerous? If a thought form can knock on your door, know your name, deliver a terrifyingly specific warning, and cause you such profound psychological trauma that you abandon your life's work, what is the meaningful difference between it and a physical entity? Where does the boundary between a powerful shared idea and an objective physical reality truly lie? The tulpa theory is both intimate and terrifying. It suggests a monster born from the focused communal act of will within a specific subculture. It's a ghost created by a small group of people staring too intently into the darkness. But what if we zoom out? What if the man in black isn't just a product of the UFO community, but a figure dredged up from a much deeper, older, and more universal part of the human psyche? To explore this, you must go beyond the specific fears of a few and descend into the shared psychological bedrock of all humanity, into the world mapped by the brilliant and controversial psychologist Carl Jung. You are no longer just an investigator of external events. You are an explorer of inner space. Jung's most revolutionary idea was the concept of the collective unconscious. He proposed that beneath our individual, personal unconscious, filled with our own forgotten memories and repressed feelings, there lies a vast, deep ocean of psychic energy that is shared by all human beings. This collective unconscious is a kind of psychological inheritance, a repository of the accumulated experiences and memories of the human species, passed down through generations. It is the source of our deepest instincts, our spiritual intuitions, and the common patterns that shape our lives. And this vast shared ocean is not empty. It is populated by what Jung called archetypes. Archetypes are universal, primordial images and symbols, innate patterns of thought and behavior that recur in the myths, dreams, religions, and fairy tales of every culture throughout history. You know them instinctively: the hero on a quest, the wise old man or woman who offers guidance, the great mother who nurtures and protects, the mischievous trickster who breaks the rules. These are not just characters in a story, they are fundamental structures of the human mind. Now we must turn to one of the most powerful and misunderstood archetypes of all, the shadow. For Jung, the shadow is everything within ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge, everything we repress and deny. It is our dark side, the part of our psyche that contains our primitive instincts, our greed, our anger, our irrational fears. It is the Mr. Hyde to our conscious Dr. Jekyll. Confronting one's personal shadow, Jung believed, was a crucial and often painful part of psychological growth. But it's not just individuals who have a shadow. Entire societies have a collective shadow, composed of all the fears, anxieties, and undesirable traits that the culture as a whole tries to repress and ignore. This is where the man in black finds his place. The theory proposes that the MIB is a modern 20th century manifestation of the collective shadow archetype. He is a nightmare figure that has bubbled up from the depths of our shared psyche to give a face to the specific anxieties of our post-war technological age. He is not an alien or a government agent in the literal sense. He is a living symbol, a psychic projection of our own repressed cultural fears. Look at his attributes. His uniform is the black suit. In the mid-20th century, this became the archetypal symbol of the faceless, soul-crushing organization. The ominous government agent, the cold corporate executive, the man from the bureaucracy. He represents our fear of a society run by vast, impersonal systems that hold immense power over our lives, but are completely unaccountable. He is the human cog in a machine that has forgotten humanity. Consider his nature, his emotionless demeanor, his robotic voice, his mechanical movements. He is the personification of our fear that our own science and technology, the very things we created to improve our lives, are now stripping us of our soul. He is the ghost in our machine, a walking symbol of a world where logic and data have triumphed over empathy, spirit, and wonder. He is the dark reflection of our own creation. And finally, consider his mission. The UFO phenomenon, at its core, is an existential and almost spiritual question. Are we alone? Is there something more to reality than our mundane, everyday lives? It is a question that promises wonder, enlightenment, and a radical expansion of human consciousness. The man in black's primary function is to be the ultimate antagonist to that promise. He appears at the very moment a person has touched the numinous, the profound, and his message is always the same. Stop. Forget what you saw. Stop asking questions. Go back to sleep. He is the archetypal force of repression, the personification of the part of our own collective psyche that is terrified of the answer to that great question. From this Jungian perspective, when a witness has a UFO encounter, they are not just seeing a strange object. They are having a powerful paradigm-breaking experience that shakes the foundations of their reality. This shock can crack open the door to the collective unconscious, and from that crack, the archetypes can emerge. The man in black steps out of the witness's own mind, and the shared mind of the culture, to act as a kind of terrifying psychological gatekeeper, trying to force the lid back on Pandora's box. He is the shadow of our age, and his job is to maintain the status quo by silencing the call to adventure. This theory roots the MIB phenomenon not in the stars or in the Pentagon, but in the very structure of our minds. But it also forces us to ask a question about our own time. If the man in black is a living symbol of our societal fears, what does his persistence in our modern folklore tell us about ourselves today? Have the anxieties he represents, the fear of hidden control, of dehumanizing technology, of being silenced by a powerful and unseen authority, faded since the Cold War? Or have they simply changed their shape, growing even more potent in our current age of digital surveillance, artificial intelligence, and social media manipulation? The idea of the man in black as a living archetype, a shadow projected by the fears of our collective psyche, is a powerful and poetic one. It transforms him from a simple enforcer into a profound symbol of our modern anxieties. It's an elegant, all-encompassing psychological theory. But sometimes a shadow is just a shadow. Sometimes the truth is not found in the deep, mystical oceans of the collective unconscious, but on the dusty, mundane surface of everyday life. Before we conclude that we are being haunted by our own psychic projections, we must pause and consider a far simpler and far more common explanation. Sometimes the monster at the door is not a tulpa, or an alien, or a COINTELPRO agent. Sometimes it's just a man. You are now a different kind of investigator. You are putting aside the esoteric theories and picking up a tool known as Occam's razor, the principle that states that the simplest explanation is usually the right one. You are looking at the case files again, but this time with an eye for the ordinary, the boring, the profoundly mundane. And when you look through this lens, many of the classic MIB encounters start to look very different. Let's start with the most obvious suspect, the legitimate, non-conspiratorial government official. Imagine you are a witness who has just seen something strange in the sky near a military base. You report it. An investigator from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations shows up. He wears a conservative dark suit because it's his professional attire. He drives a standard-issue black government sedan because that's the car he was assigned. He speaks in a serious, formal tone because he is dealing with a potential breach of airspace over a sensitive facility. He asks you to refrain from speaking about the incident because it's standard operating procedure. He is not a PSYOP agent. He is not performing a role. He is a man doing a job, and that job requires him to be discreet and authoritative. From your perspective, as a civilian rattled by an incredible experience, his ordinary professionalism can easily feel like sinister intimidation. Then you have the human element of pure mischief. The legend of the Men in Black became a staple of UFO magazines and books throughout the 1960s. It's not just plausible, but practically inevitable that pranksters would see an opportunity. How many reported MIB encounters were simply cruel hoaxes, perpetrated by local youths or even rival UFO researchers, who got a thrill out of dressing up in black suits and terrifying true believers? And the pool of potential misidentifications is even wider. Think of a pushy door-to-door salesman in a cheap black suit, trying to sell life insurance, asking questions that seem a little too personal. Think of an aggressive newspaper reporter, trying to get an exclusive, using an intimidating tone to pry details out of a reluctant witness. To a person already in a heightened state of anxiety and paranoia, following a UFO sighting, any of these mundane figures could be instantly transformed by their own perception into the dreaded silencer from the stories they've read. A perfect, real-world example of this mechanism of misidentification comes from the work of John Keel himself. In the late 1960s, Keel was investigating a wave of UFO sightings near Niagara Falls. Soon the MIB reports began. Locals who had witnessed strange lights started telling stories of mysterious men in black suits and black cars, knocking on doors and asking pointed questions. The community was terrified. The men in black were here. But Keel was a good journalist and he dug deeper. He eventually uncovered the mundane truth. The men in black were plainclothes safety investigators from the Niagara Mohawk Power Company. The area's power grid had been suffering a series of massive, unexplained power surges and equipment failures that coincided precisely with the UFO reports. The mysterious men were not there to suppress UFO reports. They were there to figure out what was blowing out their transformers. Their black cars were company vehicles. Their pointed questions were not about aliens, but about amperes. They were just men, doing a job, who had the misfortune of looking the part in a community that was primed and ready to see a monster. This case reveals the powerful engine of myth-making. It works in 3 stages. First, you have the witness's state of mind. After a genuinely strange and stressful event like a UFO sighting, your adrenaline is high, your critical thinking is low, and you are highly suggestible. Second, you have the power of narrative. You've read the books. You know the folklore. When a man fitting the description appears, your brain doesn't see a utility worker. It sees the fulfillment of a prophecy. You interpret every neutral action through the most sinister lens possible. Third, you have the process of retelling. When the story is passed from the witness to a researcher, and from the researcher to a magazine, the mundane details get polished away, and the frightening ones are amplified. The power company investigator becomes a sinister official. His questions about the grid become cryptic inquiries about energy sources. The myth grows, fed by a simple, honest mistake. This forces us to ask a difficult, critical question. How much of the vast and terrifying lore of the Men in Black is actually built upon a foundation of these mundane encounters? If a significant number of the early foundational cases were just simple misidentifications of officials, pranksters, and salesmen, couldn't the entire mythology be a kind of cultural house of cards? Each new story seems to confirm the last, but it could be that they are all just reflecting the same initial set of mistakes and exaggerations. Is it possible that the genuinely paranormal man in black is an incredibly rare creature, or perhaps doesn't exist at all? And have we, for over 70 years, been chasing the mundane shadow of a monster we created ourselves? We've just explored the very real possibility that many men in black encounters are born from simple, mundane mistakes. A power company employee, a prankster, a salesman, ordinary people seen through a lens distorted by fear and expectation. This line of reasoning grounds the phenomenon in an external, objective reality, even if that reality is misinterpreted. But now we must consider a more radical and in some ways more unsettling possibility. We've considered the chance that the witness misinterprets a real person standing on their doorstep. But what if there's no one there at all? What if the door never opens, the black car never pulls up to the curb, and the entire encounter takes place within the complex, traumatized, and terrifyingly creative landscape of the human mind? This is the hallucination hypothesis. It proposes that at least some MIB encounters are not objective events, but are instead powerful, complex, and subjectively real hallucinations, triggered by the intense psychological stress of a UFO sighting. Before you dismiss this, you need to understand what a hallucination actually is. This is not about seeing a fleeting shadow in the corner of your eye. Modern psychology and neurology have shown that the brain is perfectly capable of generating fully immersive, multisensory experiences with no external stimulus. These are not signs of craziness. They are a known, if extreme, function of human consciousness under certain conditions. The most common example is the phenomenon of sleep paralysis, where a person, caught between waking and sleeping, can experience a terrifyingly real hallucination of a menacing figure in their room, often feeling a physical pressure on their chest and hearing footsteps or whispers. These are not dreams. They are waking hallucinations, and they feel absolutely 100% real to the person experiencing them. We also know that profound psychological trauma is a powerful catalyst for these kinds of experiences. People suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, can experience vivid flashbacks that are less like memories and more like complete sensory replays of a traumatic event. Extreme stress and fear can unlock the brain's incredible capacity to create its own reality. Now apply this understanding to the UFO witness. You have just experienced something that may be the single most reality-shattering event of your life. You have seen a craft that moves in impossible ways, an object that defies every known law of physics. Your worldview, your sense of safety, your understanding of humanity's place in the universe, all of it has been called into question in a matter of moments. This is a profound psychological shock, a classic trigger for trauma. In the hours and days that follow, your mind is in turmoil. You are grappling with the immense implications of what you saw, but you are also battling a host of more immediate anxieties. You fear that no one will believe you. You fear ridicule from your friends, your family, your community. You may fear the official response, that the government will deny your experience or try to paint you as unstable. And you may have a deep, primal fear of the unknown intelligence behind the craft itself. According to the hallucination hypothesis, it is in this fertile soil of post-traumatic anxiety that the man in black is born. Your brain, struggling to process these abstract fears, does what it does best. It creates a narrative. It builds a character, a symbol, to personify everything you are afraid of. That fear of official denial and ridicule becomes a man in a black suit, the ultimate symbol of cold, dismissive authority. Your fear of being silenced becomes his menacing whispered warning. Your anxiety about the unknown becomes his strange, non-human appearance. The man in black is a waking nightmare, a personification of your own internal trauma, projected outward by your mind with such force and clarity that it becomes indistinguishable from reality. This theory elegantly explains the phenomenon's most bizarre aspects. In a hallucination, the normal laws of physics are irrelevant. Of course, the MIB can appear instantly after a phone call. Of course, a coin can dematerialize from the palm of your hand. Of course, his eyes can glow and he can smell of sulfur. These are not the glitches of a biological robot or the tricks of a PSYOP agent. They are the limitless, surreal details of a dream state. The Oz factor isn't a distortion of an external reality. It is the fundamental nature of an internal one. The reason many of the most high strangeness encounters happen when the witness is alone late at night in the safety of their own home is because these are the perfect conditions for the traumatized brain to generate a hypnagogic or waking hallucinatory state. The hypothesis is powerful. It respects the subjective reality of the witness's terror while providing a complete, contained, psychological explanation. But it faces one monumental challenge. The hallucination hypothesis works beautifully for an individual. But how does it account for the cases where two or more people, a husband and wife, a group of friends, an entire family, all claim to have witnessed the exact same man in black, heard the same words, and seen the same impossible events? Are we then forced to consider the far more controversial and scientifically murky phenomenon of a mass hallucination? Or does the simple existence of multi-witness MIB sightings serve as compelling, perhaps even definitive evidence that these encounters cannot be solely the product of a single, traumatized mind? That problem of multiple witnesses is a serious, perhaps fatal challenge to the simple hallucination theory. It strongly suggests that at least some of these encounters are objective events, happening in the shared reality of the external world. But this doesn't automatically lead us back to aliens or government agents. What if the event itself is a kind of blank slate? What if the objective reality is simply a strange man in a dark suit and all the other details we've come to associate with the men in black? The robotic voice, the vintage car, the supernatural aura, are painted on after the fact by the powerful brush of human suggestion? What if the MIBs are so consistent not because they are a consistent phenomenon, but because we are all working from the same terrifying script? To understand how this is possible, you have to appreciate the incredible power of suggestion and its close cousin, confirmation bias. These are fundamental principles of human psychology. Suggestion is the process by which one person's belief can be guided by the ideas of another. Confirmation bias is our natural tendency to notice, favor, and recall information that confirms what we already believe, while ignoring evidence to the contrary. If you are told that a house is haunted, every creak of the floorboards, every cold draft will be interpreted as proof of a ghostly presence. Your mind is actively looking for ghosts, and so it finds them. Now you are a historian of this strange folklore. You're in a library, surrounded by the smell of old paper, looking at the pulp magazines and paperback books of the 1950s and 60s. And to understand the MIB script, you have to get to know its primary author. His name was Gray Barker. Barker was a writer and UFO enthusiast from West Virginia. In 1956, he published a book that would change the course of UFO history. They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers. This book was the vehicle that took the strange, frightening, but relatively obscure story of Albert Bender and his three visitors, and launched it into the stratosphere of modern mythology. Barker was not a sober, skeptical journalist. He was a master of the pulp tradition, a sensationalist who understood that a spooky, mysterious, and conspiratorial story sold far more copies than a dry, factual investigation. He took the raw ingredients of Bender's account and baked them into a terrifying narrative, codifying the image of the sinister, all-powerful silencers who were working to suppress the truth. This is the lesser-known and deeply problematic origin of the MIB legend. Gray Barker didn't just report on the men in black. In many ways, he created them. And in the years after his death, his colleagues would reveal that Barker was not above playing fast and loose with the truth. He was a known prankster who sometimes fabricated details to spice up his stories and knowingly participated in promoting UFO hoaxes. This revelation casts a deep, dark shadow over the entire phenomenon because Barker's book was the foundational text. It was patient zero. Think of Barker's MIB narrative as a cultural virus. His book was incredibly popular and influential within the UFO community. It infected the subculture with a powerful, prepackaged explanation for any strange events that might follow a sighting. And once the virus was released, it began to replicate. Here's how it works. A witness has a strange encounter. Maybe it's a genuine, unexplained visit from a bizarre entity. Maybe it's a simple misidentification of a power company employee. Or maybe it's a stress-induced hallucination. Before Gray Barker's book, the witness would have struggled to describe their experience using their own unique words and interpretations. But after 1956, they have a template. Their brain, guided by the power of suggestion, reaches for the story it already knows. The memory of the event is subtly and unconsciously edited to fit the established narrative. The man's suit becomes a little blacker, a little sharper. His serious tone becomes a robotic, emotionless monotone. His Ford sedan is remembered as a classic, pristine Cadillac. The witness isn't necessarily lying. Their own memory is retroactively conforming to the myth. This created a powerful feedback loop. These new, myth-influenced accounts were then reported in other books and magazines, often by other dramatic writers like John Keel. While Keel was a far more sincere investigator than Barker, his vivid, compelling prose also helped to solidify and spread the legend. Each new report seemed to independently verify the details of the last, creating the illusion of a consistent, widespread phenomenon. But what was really happening was that the virus of the original story was simply replicating itself, with each new host adding a slight mutation. The astonishing consistency of MIB reports over the decades may not be evidence of a single objective phenomenon. It may simply be evidence of the profound power of a single, well-told story. This brings us to a devastating skeptical question that challenges the entire MIB canon. If the foundational text of the Men in Black mythos was written by a sensationalist author with a history of fabrication, how much of the 70 years of lore that followed can we truly trust? How do we untangle the potential threads of authentic, unexplained experiences from the thick, choking vines of cultural programming and confirmation bias that have grown up around them? Is the Man in Black phenomenon a genuine paranormal mystery? Or is it a fascinating and slightly tragic case study in the birth, life, and self-perpetuation of a truly modern urban legend? That final question, whether the Man in Black is a genuine mystery or just the echo of a ghost story told in 1956, leaves us in a deeply skeptical place. It suggests a phenomenon that is static, a piece of folklore endlessly repeating itself. But what if the phenomenon is not an echo but a living thing? If the Man in Black is a kind of cultural virus, as we've discussed, a true virus doesn't just replicate. It mutates. It adapts. It evolves to find new hosts and new ways to spread. You would expect it to change its appearance over time, to shed its old skin and adopt a new disguise that is better suited to the fears of a new generation. And it seems that's exactly what has happened. The man in the black suit may have a new and perhaps even more terrifying cousin. It's late. You are at home, the lights are low, the rest of the world is asleep. Or perhaps you are driving down a quiet, empty road. Suddenly a knock. A soft, hesitant tap on your front door or your car window. You look and you see them. 2 children standing silently in the darkness. They can't be more than 10 or 12 years old. They are dressed in simple, slightly odd or old-fashioned clothing. Your first instinct is concern. Your second instinct, which arrives with a wave of ice-cold dread, is that something is profoundly and terribly wrong. They speak. Their voices are flat, monotone, but strangely articulate and demanding. "Let us in," they say. "We need to use your phone." Or, "You have to give us a ride." There is no pleading in their tone, only a chilling, hypnotic insistence. A primal alarm bell is screaming in the back of your mind. Your body is telling you to lock the door, to drive away as fast as you can. You don't know why you're so terrified, but you are. You hesitate, and one of them looks up, meeting your gaze fully. And you see their eyes. They are not human. They are completely, utterly black. No iris, no sclera, no pupil. Just 2 solid, dark, shark-like orbs. This is the signature of the black-eyed children, or Becks, a modern urban legend that has exploded in the internet age. The origin of this myth can be traced with surprising precision to a 1996 post on an online forum by a Texas journalist named Brian Bethel. He recounted a terrifying experience from years earlier, where 2 unnervingly persuasive boys approached him in his car and relentlessly begged for a ride. He described the overwhelming, irrational fear they induced, a fear that saved him when he finally noticed their solid, coal-black eyes. His story went viral, and in the years since, thousands of similar chilling accounts have surfaced, creating a new monster for a new millennium. On the surface, this seems like a completely separate phenomenon from the men in black. One is an adult authority figure. The other is a seemingly vulnerable child. But if you look past the disguise and analyze the underlying characteristics, the family resemblance is not just uncanny, it's undeniable. First, and most strangely, is their shared insistence on being invited in. The Becks cannot seem to enter a home or a vehicle unless you give them explicit permission. This echoes a strange recurring detail in some MIB encounters, and it's a classic rule from older folklore about vampires and demons. It suggests a being that must operate under a specific, almost legalistic set of rules to interact with our world. Second, there is the voice and speech pattern. The MIB's flat, robotic monotone is mirrored in the BEK's unnaturally formal, articulate, and demanding speech, which is completely wrong for a child their age. In both cases, the voice is a primary indicator that you are dealing with something that is only performing at being human. Third, and most obviously, there are the eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul, and in these beings, the window is dark. The MIB's strange, large pupilless eyes, so often hidden behind dark sunglasses, are the clear precursor to the Becks' solid black voids. The central, terrifying, non-human feature is the same. It has just been made more overt, more extreme. Finally, and most importantly, is the emotional atmosphere. The core of both encounters is not a physical threat, but the generation of an overwhelming primal sense of dread. Witnesses of both MIBs and Becks report a sudden, irrational wave of terror, a powerful fight-or-flight response that tells them they are in the presence of a predator, hiding in plain sight. The parallels are too numerous and too specific to be a coincidence. This has led to a fascinating and chilling theory. The black-eyed children are the new men in black. They are the same phenomenon, the same archetype, which has simply updated its disguise. In the conformist, paranoid, authority-obsessed 1950s, the most effective form for a frightening, silencing entity to take was that of the man, the faceless G-man, the government agent. But our society has changed. We are more cynical about government authority. That old mask is no longer as effective. So the phenomenon adapted. It chose a new disguise, one that bypasses our cynical adult defenses and targets a more primal instinct, our impulse to trust and help a child. It's the same predator, but it has learned a new, more insidious form of camouflage. This theory of an evolving archetype forces us to ask a critical question about ourselves. If the Becks are the modern MIBs, what does this shift in appearance, from an intimidating adult to a pleading child, signify about our own changing fears? Does it mean we are no longer primarily afraid of an overt top-down authority that tells us what to think? Are we now more afraid of something that deceives us, something that mimics innocence to trick us into willingly lowering our defenses and inviting the danger into our own homes? The chilling transformation of the man in black into the black-eyed child shows the phenomenon adapting its physical form, changing its mask to suit the fears of a new era. But our world has changed in more fundamental ways than just our fears. We live in a hyper-connected digital age, a world of screens and streams and constant data. In such a world, does a monster even need to knock on your door anymore? What if the men in black have evolved beyond the need for a physical presence? What if they have learned to haunt the wires, to travel the web, and to appear not on your porch, but on your phone? Before we dive into the digital age, it's important to remember that this phenomenon has a long history of using our technology as a weapon. Long before the internet, there were the phone calls. You are a witness from the 1970s. Days after your sighting, the phone in your kitchen rings. You pick it up and say hello. There is no one on the other end, only a strange, dead silence, followed by a series of electronic clicks and a low, undulating hum, like a machine trying to breathe. Or perhaps a voice does come on the line, but it's not human. It's a distorted, metallic, synthesized voice that speaks in a bizarre, unknown language or repeats a single, nonsensical phrase over and over. You slam the phone down, your heart pounding, feeling as though your one safe line to the outside world has been contaminated by the strangeness you saw in the sky. These reports are a classic, if often overlooked, part of the MIB lore, an early sign that their reach extends beyond the physical. Now fast forward to today. You live your life online. Your photos, Your private conversations, your political opinions, your physical location, it's all data, stored on servers, constantly being monitored and analyzed. The very concept of privacy has become a fragile illusion. We are all aware of the reality of digital surveillance, of online harassment, of how easily a person's life can be disrupted by unseen forces through a keyboard. This new transparent world is the perfect hunting ground for a modern man in black. The encounters have evolved. You are a witness in the 21st century. You see something incredible and you do what comes naturally. You post about it. You upload the video to YouTube, you share the photo on a UFO forum, you tweet about your experience. Then the weirdness begins. An anonymous email appears in your inbox. The sender's address is a meaningless string of characters from an encrypted service. The email contains a satellite photo of your house. It knows the name of your dog. It contains a single sentence. Some things are best left unseen. You delete it, but the message has been received. Or perhaps it's more subtle. You notice your social media accounts are behaving strangely. Posts you know you didn't write appear on your timeline, filled with bizarre, esoteric nonsense designed to make you look unstable. You receive friend requests from dozens of blank profiles all at once. The intimidation is no longer a single, terrifying event at your door. It's a low-level, persistent, psychological campaign of digital harassment designed to make you feel watched, isolated, and paranoid. Then there is the most visual and perhaps most disturbing evolution, the photobombing MIB. You're excitedly reviewing the footage you took on your phone of that strange light in the sky. You're scrubbing through the video, frame by frame, or zooming in on a high-resolution photo. And then your blood runs cold. There, in the background, half hidden behind a tree or standing under a streetlight at the edge of the frame, is a figure. A tall, unnaturally thin man in a dark suit. You stare at the image. You were there. You know for a fact that man was not there when you took the picture. There was no one around. And yet, there he is. A silent, digital ghost, captured not by your eyes, but by your camera's lens. He is the 21st century MIB, a creature that shares a lineage with the internet-birthed legend of the Slender Man, a phantom that exists at the intersection of reality and technology. It seems the MIB phenomenon, whatever its true source, is adaptive. It uses the dominant medium of the era to make its presence felt. In the 1950s, the most potent symbol of intrusion was the unannounced visitor in a powerful American car. In the latter 20th century, it was the violation of your private phone line. Today, in an age where our lives are mediated by screens, the phenomenon has become a digital ghost. If it's a government psyop, these digital tactics are cheap, effective, and offer perfect deniability. If it's an ultra-terrestrial intelligence, perhaps our global electronic network is a more convenient medium for it to manipulate than our messy, dense physical world. But this technological evolution creates a profound and perhaps unsolvable problem of evidence. The very technology that allows for these new forms of encounters also makes them incredibly easy to fake. Anyone with basic video editing software can insert a shadowy figure into the background of a clip. Any dedicated internet troll can orchestrate a campaign of online harassment that seems deeply conspiratorial. The digital world is a realm of phantoms, fakes, and illusions. So how can we ever hope to tell the difference between a genuine paranormal digital encounter and a clever, all-too-human hoax? Has our own technology created the perfect storm? A place where a real phenomenon and a million convincing fakes can coexist, becoming completely indistinguishable from one another? Has the man in black finally found the perfect place to hide? Not in a dark alley, but in the endless white noise of digital static? While the digital age has clouded the waters, making the man in black harder to pin down and easier to fake, another, even more powerful force has completely reshaped his image in the public consciousness. This force didn't emerge from a government agency, another dimension, or the depths of the internet. It came from Hollywood, and with a flash of light, it transformed a figure of pure terror into a global entertainment icon, changing the conversation forever. You are sitting in a darkened movie theater. The year is 1997. The lights go down, the iconic bouncy theme song kicks in, And for the next 90 minutes, you are introduced to a brand new universe. It's a world where a secret agency polices alien life on Earth, and its top agents are a cynical veteran and a charismatic, wisecracking rookie. They are, of course, the Men in Black. The film, loosely based on a little-known and much darker comic book, was a cultural juggernaut. It was funny, it was action-packed, it was impossibly cool, and it completely, and perhaps permanently, overwrote the dark folklore that came before it. Let's perform a side-by-side comparison, a tale of two MIBs. On one hand, you have the MIB of folklore, the entity we've spent our time investigating. He is a terrifying, unnerving figure. His movements are robotic, his skin is unnaturally pale, his voice is a soulless monotone. His purpose is to intimidate, to threaten, and to enforce a chilling, absolute silence. He is a walking embodiment of paranoia and dread, a glitch in reality that leaves witnesses psychologically shattered. On the other hand, you have the Hollywood Man in Black. He is suave, heroic, and armed with witty one-liners. He is played by Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. The black suit and sunglasses are not the uniform of a sinister bureaucracy, but the height of cool. Their job is not to silence human witnesses, but to protect humanity from the scum of the universe. They are the good guys. Their world is filled with talking pugs, flashy alien technology, and at the center of it all is their signature gadget, the Neuralizer, a small silver device that, with a brilliant flash, can erase your memory and replace it with a more convenient fiction. The success of this new, family-friendly MIB had two profound effects on the original legend. The first was simple trivialization. The films defanged the monster. They took a figure that was genuinely disturbing and turned it into a source of laughter and spectacle. It is incredibly difficult to maintain a sense of primal fear about a concept that has also been used to sell toys, video games, and fast food meals. The Hollywood version was so overwhelmingly popular that for anyone born after about 1990, the name Men in Black doesn't conjure images of Albert Bender's terror. It conjures an image of Will Smith fighting a giant cockroach. But this leads to a second, more conspiratorial interpretation. What if this trivialization wasn't an accident? This is the fringe theory of the MIB phenomenon as a soft psyop, an act of cultural inoculation. Imagine you are the shadowy power group that the original MIBs actually work for. You have a real ongoing problem. Your operatives are occasionally seen and the stories are spreading, creating a threatening mythology you can't control. How do you neutralize it? A direct denial is useless, so you use a far more subtle and brilliant strategy. You find the most sensational pop culture-friendly version of the myth, in this case the comic book. You buy the rights, and you pour hundreds of millions of dollars into turning it into one of the biggest, most beloved comedies of all time. It's the ultimate act of hiding in plain sight. You co-opt the threat, you own it, and you redefine it on your own terms. By turning the Men in Black into a joke, you make the real, terrifying phenomenon impossible for the average person to take seriously. If a traumatized witness comes forward today with a story about a visit from a robotic acting man in a black suit, the immediate public reaction, thanks to the films, is not fear or curiosity, but a dismissive chuckle. Oh, you mean like in the movie? The real story is instantly framed as a fantasy, its power completely neutralized by the pop culture behemoth. In a strange, beautiful irony, the most iconic device from the film serves as a perfect metaphor for what the franchise itself accomplished. The Neuralizer, with its flashy wand and memory-wiping flash, is exactly what the movies did to our collective culture. The entire film franchise was a kind of mass neuralizing event. It made us all look at the little flashy light of Hollywood, and with a brilliant burst of entertainment, it erased our collective cultural memory of the dark, unsettling, and genuinely frightening Men in Black of folklore, replacing it with a fun, harmless, and much more entertaining fiction. This act of cultural overwriting leaves us with a critical and perhaps unanswerable question. Has the Hollywood version of the Men in Black become so powerful and so deeply embedded in our global consciousness that it is now impossible to have an authentic MIB experience? When a witness today has a strange encounter, is their memory of the event now hopelessly contaminated by decades of cinematic imagery? Do they remember a sleek black car because they saw one? or because that's what the movies told them MIBs drive? Has the fiction, in a final, ironic twist, become so dominant that it has completely reshaped the very phenomenon it was based on? After navigating the funhouse mirror of Hollywood, we are left standing in a room full of shattered fragments. The pieces of the Man in Black puzzle are scattered at our feet, and none of them seem to fit together. We have the grim-faced government agent from the COINTELPRO playbook. We have the malfunctioning alien robot on a covert mission. We have the interdimensional trickster from a parallel reality. We have the psychic tulpa, born from our own collective fear. And now we have the wisecracking blockbuster hero. Which one is the real Man in Black? What if the mistake all along has been in trying to choose just one? What if the profound, confounding truth of this mystery is that they are all real? To understand how this can be, you have to step back and look at the phenomenon not as a single object, but as a complex system. In science, there is a concept called emergence. It's the idea that complex, intelligent, and unpredictable patterns can arise from the interaction of multiple simple agents, each following their own basic rules. A single ant is a simple creature with a limited instruction set, but a million ants, each following those simple rules, interact to create the emergent intelligence of an ant colony, capable of building complex structures and solving problems no single ant could conceive of. A single neuron is just a biological switch, firing or not firing. But billions of neurons interacting in a vast network create the emergent, ineffable miracle of human consciousness. What if the Man in Black phenomenon is not a single agent but an emergent system? Let's try to build a unified theory, a model with multiple, interacting layers. At the very bottom, let's place layer 1, the core phenomenon. We must assume that something genuinely strange and anomalous is happening to trigger this entire sequence. This is the stone dropped into the quiet pond. This core event could be any of the non-human possibilities we've discussed. It could be the appearance of John Keel's ultra-terrestrials, phasing into our reality. It could be the work of alien biological androids servicing a covert program. It could be the space-time distortion caused by a temporal or dimensional intrusion. These are the real paranormal Men in Black, like the entity that dematerialized Dr. Hopkins's coin. They are the original high strangeness signal. This signal does not happen in a vacuum. It immediately creates ripples, which leads to layer 2, the human institutional reaction. A strange craft crashes or a credible witness reports an encounter with a non-human entity. The institutions of human power, governments, militaries, intelligence agencies, are forced to react. They want to understand the phenomenon, control it, and above all, conceal it from the public to prevent panic or protect national security. So they dispatch their own Men in Black suits. These are the AFOSI agents, the COINTELPRO-style operatives. Their job is to investigate, intimidate, and spread disinformation. These human agents are the first tangible echo of the core phenomenon. They are very real, but they are a reaction to the mystery, not the source of it. Now you have two types of MIB stories circulating: the genuinely paranormal accounts from layer 1 and the terrestrial conspiracy accounts from layer 2. These stories spread through books, magazines, and word of mouth, creating a powerful cultural narrative. This leads to layer 3, the psycho-cultural reaction. The image of the Man in Black, a fusion of the paranormal and the political, becomes deeply embedded in our collective consciousness. It becomes a potent modern myth. And as we've explored, a myth with enough focused emotional energy behind it can take on a life of its own. It can become a tulpa, a thought form that manifests in moments of intense fear. It can solidify into a Jungian archetype, a shadow figure that emerges from the psyche of a witness who has been traumatized by a brush with the unknown. These are the MIBs of our inner space, an echo of an echo. Finally, you have layer 4, the feedback loop. None of these layers exist in isolation. They all begin to interact, creating a chaotic, self-sustaining, and ever-evolving system. A witness has a genuine layer 1 paranormal encounter, but because of the layer 3 mythos, they misremember details to fit the cultural script. Another witness encounters a perfectly mundane layer 2 government agent, but their own traumatized mind projects the paranormal qualities of a Layer 1 entity onto him. A hoaxer, inspired by the myth, creates a fake MIB story that adds more noise to the system. And then Hollywood comes along and blankets the entire chaotic system with a final, overwhelming layer of commercialized fiction, distorting everything. So, who is the Man in Black? The answer is, it's a job title. And there are multiple applicants. The position can be filled by an ultra-terrestrial, a government agent, or a phantom from your own mind. The phenomenon is no longer a single entity, but a complex emergent role in our modern drama. The black suit is the costume, but the actor inside can change from one night to the next. This unified theory seems to account for all the contradictory evidence, but it leaves us with a final, daunting question. If the Man in Black is this tangled, emergent system of signals, echoes, and feedback, can we ever hope to truly understand it? When a new report surfaces, is there any way to determine if it's the original signal or just another reflection in an endless hall of mirrors? Or has the phenomenon become a permanent self-sustaining myth, where the echoes are now far louder and more powerful than the original voice that first broke the silence? We are left with this tangled, layered, and ultimately unresolved picture of the Man in Black, a phenomenon that seems to be part government agent, part alien entity, part psychic projection, and part cultural myth, all woven together in a chaotic, self-sustaining loop. In this noisy, modern world of digital ghosts, sensationalized media, and Hollywood funhouse mirrors, it's easy to assume that the original phenomenon has been lost, drowned out by its own echoes. Does the classic Man in Black encounter even happen anymore? Does a man with corpse-like skin and a funereal suit still knock on the doors of those who have seen too much? The unsettling answer, it seems, is yes. You are a hotel manager, a man we'll call Shane. The year is 2008. Your hotel sits in a quiet town near the US-Canada border. A few nights ago, you saw something you can't explain. A massive, black, triangular craft, utterly silent, moved slowly across the night sky. It was a classic flying wing UFO, and the sight has left you unnerved and full of questions. A few days later, while you're at work, two men walk into your hotel lobby. You know instantly that they are not here to book a room. They are both dressed in identical, old-fashioned, thick black suits, complete with black fedoras, despite the weather being fairly mild. They move stiffly. Their faces are unnervingly pale, almost unnaturally so, and you notice with a jolt that they have no eyebrows, no eyelashes, and no visible facial hair. Their skin is smooth, like a department store mannequin. They approach the front desk. They don't introduce themselves. They simply begin to ask you questions about the black triangle you saw. Their voices are flat, emotionless monotones. Their questions are pointed, specific, and carry an undercurrent of menace. The encounter lasts only a few minutes, but when they turn and walk out, gliding back to their black car, you are left with a feeling of profound, primal terror. You have been warned. But the story doesn't end there. The experience sends you, Shane, down a rabbit hole. You start researching online, not just about black triangle UFOs, but about stranger, more esoteric subjects you stumble upon. Ancient occultism, forgotten texts, the intersection of paranormal phenomena, and what some would call magic. You feel like you are getting close to some deeper, more connected truth. And then, they come back. A second visit. This time, their line of questioning is different, and 1,000 times more terrifying. They aren't asking about the UFO anymore. They are asking about your internet search history. In their flat, robotic voices, they ask you what you have learned about specific, deeply obscure occult figures and concepts, things you have only just read about on your computer screen in the privacy of your own home. The omniscience of the 1950s MIB has received a terrifying 21st century upgrade. They are not just watching the skies, they are watching your screen. The message is clear. There are some doors that you are not meant to open, both in the sky and on the web. This modern case is a chilling bookend to our investigation. It contains all the classic, terrifying hallmarks of the original phenomenon. The anachronistic suits, the non-human appearance, the emotionless interrogation, the palpable sense of dread. It proves that the physical, in-person encounter is not just a relic of the past, but it also demonstrates a clear evolution. The MIB's knowledge of the witness's online activity shows that they have adapted their methods of surveillance to our digital world. Furthermore, their interest in the occult, rather than just the UFO, broadens their entire scope. It suggests that they are not just the flying saucer police, but perhaps the guardians of a much wider and more dangerous spectrum of forbidden knowledge, just as the old esoteric theories proposed. The shadow still lingers, and it has grown. And so, after our long journey through government conspiracies, alien agendas, psychic projections, and modern myths, we are left right back where we started. With a terrified witness and an unanswerable question, the men in black have defied every simple explanation we've tried to force upon them. They are a paradox, at once human and inhuman, physical and psychic, mundane and supernatural. They are the ultimate mystery, not because we have too little information, but because we have too much and all of it is contradictory. So we are left with the final, lingering question. Is the man in black an active and enduring force in our world? A persistent intelligence that continues to watch, to adapt, and to enforce its silence for reasons we can only guess at? Or are these modern encounters merely the last fading ghosts of a potent 20th century legend, an echo that refuses to die, kept alive by the vast amplifying chamber of the internet and our own timeless, unshakable fascination with the shadows? We've journeyed from the panicked silence of Albert Bender in 1953 to the modern, digital dread of a hotel manager in 2008. We've explored the men in black as government agents running a complex psyop, as alien-made biological robots, as interdimensional phantoms, and even as projections of our own collective fears. Each theory provides a piece of the puzzle, yet none can account for the whole, terrifying picture. The MIB remains an enigma, a figure that shifts its shape to fit our anxieties, whether they be of the surveillance state, the alien other, or the darkness within our own minds. Perhaps the only certainty is that the fear they generate is real. Ultimately, the mystery is now in your hands. What do you think they are? The question lingers, unanswered, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. As fellow investigators of the strange, your perspective is a vital piece of the ongoing search for answers. We may never know the complete truth, but the act of questioning is what keeps the darkness at bay. That's all for today. Stay curious, stay questioning, and I'll see you in the next file.